Okay, welcome everybody. And I think we have a quorum. We'll call for that in a minute. Grab a seat, there's plenty.
Jessica, can you help us call the roll? I think Colin had to step out.
Chair Bonham,
Present here.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Here.
Member Gear, Member Pavley,
Here.
Member Peralt, Member Thomas, and Member Zavaleta.
And I think we have one.
I think we have four.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You probably didn't hear it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so new board member, welcome. Tina, nice to see you. And welcome everybody. I think when we look at the audience, many of you appear in front of the board, but in broad strokes, our general run of show will be kind of following the numbers in the agenda, some updates, consent items, which depending on public input, tend to move pretty quickly. Then we'll have presentation items. We're going to keep an eye on the clock, go as strong as we can until it looks like there's a consensus around maybe a break or lunch. I do think we'll have a lunch period because we're going to have to go a little bit into the early afternoon. And if you've been to the building before, kind of restrooms are outside down on this floor. In the unlikely event of an emergency, you will have help folks shuttle us outside to the courtyard. As you're coming in, I think the practice is still to give us a note, a card, if you want to speak on. We don't do that anymore. Okay, so when we get to the agenda items that are presentation, you'll be queuing up virtually if you're participating online. You'll come down here to the podium and queue up, and we'll at each agenda item call for public comment. I turn over most of the meeting to our esteemed executive director to run it. And on items, we'll typically hear presentations. We'll come back up to board members if they have questions for staff. We'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back for discussion, motion, deliberation. What am I missing, Jen?
You got it.
All right, let's get it going. That puts us to approval of agenda. Anybody want to change the agenda? Nope. Jen, over to you. I think that,
Yes, thank you, Chair.
so should we move to approve?
I don't think we have to do that. I think we just added that in case we wanted to make any changes, but we're good. We'll move on. Just wanted to give my executive director report, keep it brief, but as many of you know, we're in the midst of budget season, which is always fun. The May revise came out just a week ago, I believe. We are attending hearings and answering questions as a result of that. I will say for WCB, there weren't a lot of changes for us from what you saw in January. There was one solution, rescission of $15 million for climate and watershed resilience, which is, if you've been around this board for a while, it's a pot that kind of comes and goes. So we were expecting it to maybe go. So, but we still have a fairly substantial Prop 4 request, 230 million plus or minus. There's also a recommendation to for 5 positions for WCB to help us implement Prop 4, which we were glad to see put forward. And of course, that's all subject to the budget negotiations, but that's where we stand now. I just wanted to call the board's attention to a couple of things to be aware of beyond the budget. There is a fair amount of legislation moving with the intention to earmark the funding that we would get under Prop 4. So if you'll recall, we get about a $1.02 billion over 10 years. If I total it up, it's somewhere between $400 and $500 million would be earmarked under current legislation that is moving, which would take away some of our flexibility about what we'd be able to do. It would be directed toward a specific set of projects. Just wanted you to know that's the case. And why I raise that is in part for the public to know that while our portal is open and we are evaluating projects, how that legislation shakes out has a big effect on which projects we would fund this year versus those we would defer to next year, particularly if there are ones that are earmarked. We don't want to pay for them now and then be told to pay for them later. So we're just sorting through all those pieces. It's always a little uncertain at this time of year, but we're managing it fine. But some of that legislation might not get resolved till the end of the summer. So that just is what it is. Just another note on the portal. So we did open it on Earth Day. No surprise. We got the avalanche. We all thought we should wear raincoats on that day, and it was probably a good idea. There was so much demand. I think an observation is that folks remember how the heyday of 2022, when we had $1 billion to spend in 2 years. That is not the case now for WCB. We have $1 billion to spend over 5 to 10 years, which means a couple $100 million a year. So I think I just want to say publicly, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people because there's no way we can fund all the asks, but we are doing our best to find the very best projects, making sure we're bringing to you the cream of the crop and those that drive on our priorities. So to that end, our strategic plan public comment period has closed. We received a lot of good feedback from partners and tribes. We intend to bring you our strategic plan for approval at the August board meeting. And of course, if any of you at any time have comments on that, I'll welcome them, although we'll take the document to our designer probably in about a month. And then lastly, just wanted to share that we are finally trying to make good on our promise to move a board meeting to another part of the state. And we are currently targeting November to go to San Diego. And Senator Blake Spear's office is working on helping us find a venue. So get your beach clothes. We might be in San Diego in November, but we're also holding the possibility that we'll have to be here in Sacramento if that doesn't work out, but I feel pretty confident that it will. And we may actually try to do a site visit as well while we're out there. So that's all good news. And that is the end of my report.
Note to members, you have to push the button here to go from red to green. How long have you been executive director again?
This will be about a year and a half, November, year and a half ago.
Time flies.
I know.
Great job.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jen in the director's report? No. So that takes us to agenda item 4, which is board member updates or reports. I don't have any. Life is good in many ways, and other ways I'm reminded of Norman McLean's comment in A River Runs Through It. You can love something completely, even when you don't completely understand it. And I feel a little bit like that about how our kind of civil processes are playing out, but stick with it. We've got a lot of good we can do here in California, certainly through this board. I don't know if any other board members want to share. Tina, if you have introductory, I'm fired up and ready to go, newest board member thoughts you want to share?
I'll just share that I'm very happy to be here and happy to be on the dais with all of you, esteemed members and members of the public. And I look forward to hearing these really interesting topics. So thank you for letting me have this opportunity.
Vice Chair, anything? We good? All right, we're cruising right along. That takes us to agenda item 5.
Yeah, so just agenda item 5 is just the funding status information for all of you. Sort of bottom line at the end of this board meeting, we do have a set of sort of larger acquisitions that have been in the works for a while that we're trying to move through. That will exhaust almost all of the general fund money that we received from 2022. So WCB staff has done an amazing job of getting that money spent. I think we should all be really proud of the fact that we didn't leave much on the table. So after this board meeting, across all funds, we'll have about 200 million And as a reminder, that includes a fair amount of funds that have very particular demands and needs and requirements. So not as much flexible money, but then if Prop 4 comes along, we will have a healthy year to look forward to. And then on the recovery of funds, we did have a couple of fairly large recoveries, at least one project, Mad River Enhancement came in a lot lower. Turned out they didn't need the planning and CEQA work that we had approved them for. So we got 300 million back, which is nice. And then Grizzly Island, similarly, the bids were a lot lower than was anticipated. So we got a fair amount of money coming back through. Otherwise, the recoveries are fairly modest. With that, I'll take questions if you have any. Yeah.
Yes, just out of curiosity on greenhouse gas emission reduction, those funds are still here and they're not likely to be returned for any reason. And is there any proposal in this next year's budget for additional GGRF falling into the Wildlife Conservation Board jurisdiction?
I'm sorry, the question was, I couldn't. quite-
Maybe two parts, but the primary one is on the GGRF funds. We have several that could be perhaps swept if they were, because they're general fund dollars, but legitimately your 30-30 plan and things could be a good expenditure of those funds. Is there any proposals in the governor's 25-26 fiscal year budget for additional GGRF funds that might find
Got it.
go
Okay.
our way, or are we sort of just focused on Proposition 4?
For now, the governor's budget only includes additional funds for WCB from Prop 4. I've heard the conversation about GGRF, how they will invest, that's on the table. And there are folks that have argued for some funds to go to conservation work. So I guess that's TBD. Regarding the money that's still here, this 100 million, that's specific to stream flow and drought reduction. And I don't expect that's going to go. I think it's going to help us with our salmon strategy. And so it's being fairly well protected. at this
So
point.
it's tailored. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on funding? Seeing none. And welcome, Department of Finance. Thank you. Busy time of year for you to do anything other than the budget hearings. So we appreciate you.
Want to share any insights, any pro tips?
I have no insights other than the fact that it's a tough budget year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and to member Pavli's question around GGRF, there are some proposals to shift some funding, particularly in wildfire, over to GGRF. At this point, that's kind of the biggest proposal of shifts of funds into it, but not necessarily an expansion of additional funds in that space.
Okay, so this puts us right at consent items, which the agenda should be clear for everyone tracking, is a collection of items from 6 through 20. We will pause right now and just say we take public comment on that if anyone wants to queue up here in the room or online. And, this is often a package of things which are like super straightforward, non-controversial. But sometimes we forget, even in the consent agenda, there's some remarkable stories. So if you've taken a look at these, I love the name Tomato Stand Fish Passage. It's actually the last barrier to fix in an important Bay Area steelhead stream. You've got a project which is about ecological knowledge and tribal relationships consistently improving. So you've got public lands benefiting in here. You've got like implementation steps on large scale regulatory programs for conservation. So we're going to move this as a block, but within the block are great stories.
And if
Okay,
I
so-
may, I have to add two things into the record, just because there were some errors. Was one error and one letter. So for Parissima Hills Conservation Easement, I just want to let you all know that we received, so backing up just for 2 seconds. We put out our preliminary agenda a month before, 5 weeks before a board meeting, more or less, a month before the board meeting. And call for letters so that we can put them in your packet for your review, but inevitably we get letters late. And so I just share that we have those and they will be in the record, but you haven't had a chance to see them all. So Catherine Darst, field supervisor from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, sent a letter of support for Parissima Hills. I just wanted you to know that, and I'll have other letters later. And then Stenner Creek Watershed Enhancement, there's an error in our agenda. The proposal is to restore 15, not 16 stream crossings, so slightly less. Thank you.
Great. So let me pause real quick. And is there anyone in the room that has public comment on any consent agenda item? Okay, seeing none, let me turn to our technology. Come on down. Yes, that's not in the consent items. That's okay. And then let me turn to our technology experts. Anyone in queue online to comment on the consent calendar?
There are no raised hands.
So we'll come back up to the dais. Any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion to move the consent calendar?
Well, I just have a quick comment. As one who worked up in the Lake Earl area for a very long time, I was super excited to see that some resources are being put together to help clean up that area. And I was also really excited to see that the tribes are actively going to be a part of that restoration project because they need all the help they can get up there.
For sure. And just on that note, I'll be going up in July, I think, for a government to government conversation with those tribes about improving the relations. Perfect. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'm happy to move the consent calendar.
Okay, I'll second. Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Yes, aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Yes.
Member Gear,
Yes.
Member Pavley,
Yes.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
Member Zavaleta. Motion passes.
Right. Cooking with renewable energy. Yep. All right, so now presentation calendars. We'll go number by number. Board staff will give us a presentation, usually ooh and ah moments with great photos. And then we'll come back up for questions for board members. At that moment, we'll call the queue. And, we're not going to keep that online queue open indefinitely. We need you to raise that hand promptly. And then we'll see where public is for comment. We'll deliberate and move projects. So that takes us to agenda item 21.
Great. And I'll call up Amy Henderson to present on Bombay Beach Wetland Enhancement, which is a big milestone.
Huge milestone. So excited to be up here. Okay, so good morning, everyone. This proposal is to consider the allocation for a grant to the California Department of Water Resources to restore and enhance 564 acres of wetland habitat along the east side of the Salton Sea, adjacent to the community of Bombay Beach in Imperial County. The project benefits a Justice community by providing climate and public health benefits, as well as recreational opportunities. Next slide, please. So the Bombay Beach Wetland Enhancement Project was developed due to the increasing salinity and shrinking of the Salton Sea, which is affecting wildlife habitat and contributing to increased dust emissions. One of the primary contributing factors for this problem is the decline in water flowing into the Salton Sea. Freshwater sources coming into the sea include washes, stormwater runoff, and shallow perched groundwater. This slide shows the Kin and Pacific washes converging at the project location. Emergent freshwater and saline wetland habitats have formed in these areas, providing beneficial habitat for the endangered desert pupfish and Yuma ridgeways rail. The project has 4 main goals. First, it's to stabilize and enhance the existing wetland areas, promote habitat development on adjacent exposed lakebed areas, expand ancillary dust control, and finally, to provide community benefits. So how will all of this be accomplished? Next slide, please. So here you can see the site schematic overlaid onto the aerial view of the project area. It includes bunds, B-U-N-D-S, these trapezoidal marks on the left, which are earthen features that will enhance water spreading and water retention of runoff during storm events, which will support natural recruitment of vegetation and the development of upland and seasonal wetland habitat. The solid darker line making a long ovalish shape on the schematic there depicts the 22,000 linear feet or almost 4 miles of water control berms that will be constructed using compacted native soil from on-site borrow sources. The berms are intended to mimic the function of existing beach bridges and will stabilize, enhance, and expand existing wetland habitat through the retention and spreading of surface water flows. The depth of water impounded behind the water control berms will be controlled with flashboard risers, which are inlet boxes that will be connected to culvert pipes used to convey water through the berms. Water levels can be increased or decreased by inserting or removing additional boards with an average water depth of 1 foot as the target goal. During periods of high runoff that could overwhelm the flow capacity of the flashboard risers, armored riprap weirs will serve as supplemental berm cell spillways. Unarmored dips in strategic berm locations are expected to experience occasional damage or failure. However, this design reduces the potential for widespread erosion and berm failure and facilitates the Department of Water Resources maintenance following damaging high flow events. The smaller closed circles that you see there are the borrow pits, and these will be converted to ponds. The project also includes 3.3 miles of access roads, which you can see extending east and west from the wetland areas. Next slide, please. So restoration efforts will occur after construction is complete using 3 differently locally sourced seed mixes. The areas to be restored include the exposed slopes of the berms, the ponds, and the disturbed areas on the exposed lake bed or playa. Seeding will be done by hand, broadcast, or with the use of seed drill. Here's a visual of kind of what we're hoping that the project accomplishes. On the left, there's exposed lake bed or playa, which once water is captured and retained, will start to revegetate with either wetland or upland vegetation to look more like the area on the far right. Next slide, please. So staff recommends the board approve the project as proposed. Here with us today on Zoom to make a brief statement and answer any questions you might have is Samantha Arthur, Department Secretary for Water from the California Natural Resources Agency. And I'm also happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Sammy, are you actually there and do you want to make a statement?
I
think
am here.
And aren't you down there in the region?
I am, yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Samantha Arthur. I am leading our Salton Sea Management Program, overseeing our work down here at the sea. And I wanted to just compliment Amy's site-specific description of this proposal with a bit of a picture of what we're doing here across the Salton Sea. So we're the Salton Sea Management Program. That's a collaboration of the Natural Resources Agency, Department of Water Resources, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And we are doing restoration projects around the full Salton Sea. There's been a decline in lake levels at the sea, and we know that that leads to degradation of habitat. It can also make exposed lake bed emissive and contribute to poor air quality. So our charge is to build 30,000 acres of restoration projects around the Salton Sea. And the reason I'm not here in person, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there, is because our full team is down at the south end of the sea celebrating a really exciting milestone. We are flooding up 2,000 acres of our largest project at the south end of the sea called the Species Conservation Habitat Project. So we have about 70 people who are out pushing a button and turning on these huge large-scale ponds where we're impounding water and building aquatic habitat. We have about 7,000 acres that are under construction, and we're really excited about this project in particular because it's a partnership project. It came to us from Audubon, California. So we're excited to continue to work in that partnership. They've done a lot of great coordination with the local community there in Bombay. So that's an important part of our work for constructing this project. This is a wetland type project. So like Amy described, that's actually kind of a surprising phenomenon that's happened at the sea. As it's receded, these natural wetlands have sprung up. And so we really see an opportunity to work with nature and actually be responsive to what's coming up on the sea and stabilize those wetlands, enhance those wetlands, spread them out. So we're getting more benefit for birds on the Pacific Flyway, protected birds, and more dust suppression. We also have a public access plan. So I think a real opportunity here to benefit the local community in terms of trails, wildlife viewing. This is the contribution that we're seeking from Wildlife Conservation Board would match about 12.6 million in Department of Water Resources funds as well. So we really appreciate the consideration today. Again, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but it's just because good things are happening here and we hope we can, continue the progress.
Send us photos. Congratulations to everyone down there. Next time, invite all of us to join you.
Don't you
Joking.
worry, there will be
Joking.
celebrations.
So let's come back up to board members. And while we do that, anyone that is in the public that would like to comment on the agenda item, please come up into the front of the room. And those participating online, please raise your virtual hand. And after we survey for board questions, we'll close the queue for public comment. Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Sounds like a great project. I'm glad to hear that Audubon, California was involved. I saw here that the Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla Indians were engaged. Just wondering if you or the other person could just describe that engagement a little bit.
I'm hoping is,
I can jump in, Amy.
hey, thank you.
Yeah, so we are actually here with the Torres Martinez tribe today. The chairman provided our opening remarks at our milestone event here. And so we've really been building, a deeper partnership there and a growing collaboration with that tribe, both at this specific project, but more broadly for additional projects around the sea. They are a landowner on the west side of the sea, so really important partners and important opportunities to contribute tribal ecological knowledge to how we construct these projects. In particular, we're working with them now on interpretive signage and bringing forward, that important history of the tribal communities here in the Salton Sea region.
Great, thank you. Glad to hear that partnership is growing. Wonderful.
I have another board question.
Hi, first, thanks for the presentation. It really helped to get both the project detail as well as the larger context. Just one quick question, as it is a partnership project, the grants to DWR, so who is responsible for the ongoing management and maintenance? It sounds like there is some sort of water management that has to happen.
It'll be DWR and then also the Salton Sea Management Plan. So maybe ultimately the Salton Sea Conservancy, which is new, but it's CNRA, CDFW, DWR, they're all involved and they're all working together on it. It is highly managed. So yeah, you're correct.
Great.
And just to reinforce that, we are a multi-state program, multi-state agency program. The actual agreements here are with DWR. So they are the long-term managers. There is a new conservancy that is being stood up that's just passed the legislature and was signed by the governor about 6 months ago. So in the future, there's an opportunity. That conservancy is to operate and maintain projects. So in the future, we envision there being a partnership there with that conservancy.
Looking around, not seeing other board member questions. Let's go to public in the room. And so we don't tend to set a time limit, but we do, okay? I,
We did a lot of meetings.
we do this 4 times a year. I'll get a rhythm. So we're saying 2 minutes and like points for like succinctness.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable, start with just letting us know who you are and if you represent an entity or an organization. Over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Michael Chen, Senior Manager of Government Relations for Audubon, California. Here to express our strong support for this project. Audubon, California began laying the foundation for this project in 2019 and led its early development through extensive stakeholder engagement, community outreach, and technical design work. Since then, we've continued to work closely with the state to transition leadership to the project, while continuing to contribute our expertise and on-the-ground presence. The Bombay Beach Wetland Project is a model effort that demonstrates how we can address multiple urgent challenges at the Salton Sea. While habitat restoration remains at the heart of the project, it also directly supports public health, dust suppression, and responds to the region's need for outdoor access. We are actively working to incorporate public access features in future phases. For wildlife, the project will create high-quality habitat for a range of species, including the endangered Yuma ridgeways rail and desert pupfish. As the Salton Sea continues to face challenges, timely, well-designed projects like this are essential, not only for restoring ecological function, but also for building long-term resilience in frontline communities. We strongly encourage the Wildlife Conservation Board to support this project, and thank you for your leadership and investment in this region. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nicely done. Anyone else in the room want to make public comment? Okay. So let's check with our technology folks. Anyone in the virtual queue? Great. So come back up to the board. Further questions, any deliberation, ready to make a motion? Looking around.
I'll move approval. Excuse me, I'll move approval of this item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Yes.
Member Pavley,
Yes.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay.
Awesome. We're going to keep Amy up here to talk about the Prescott Preserve Ecological Restoration Project. And I will just point out, we did get 2 late letters of support for the record.
Okay, well, this proposal is to consider the allocation for a grant to the Oswett Land Trust to restore 28.14 acres of desert habitat on a portion of a defunct 120-acre golf course within the city of Palm Springs known as Prescott Preserve. The project benefits a justice community by providing climate benefits, recreation, and access to nature for underrepresented groups. Next slide, please. The Coachella Valley features extensive urban development and a notably high concentration of golf courses. The project's ultimate purpose is to eventually restore all 75 acres of the 120-acre Prescott Preserve back to native desert vegetation. The restoration will occur over 3 phases. In the project put forth before you today is phase 1, which is highlighted in the green area and totals 28.14 acres. It should be noted that Tuckeets Creek runs through the center or near center of the project, but is not part of this restoration at this time. Next slide, please. The purpose of the project is to restore 14.65 acres of desert dry wash, 11.22 acres of creosote bush scrub, and 2.27 acres of native buffer habitat, which will be planted between the preserve and an adjacent neighborhood. The project will enhance the existing wildlife connectivity between the San Jacinto Mountains and the Coachella Valley floor. The restoration will provide habitat for up to 19 special status species, including the federally endangered Casey's June beetle, which is found in desert wash and desert scrub vegetation. Along with restoring and enhancing habitat for wildlife and plant species, the project will also engage the community by providing public access with a 1.1-mile loop trail, passive recreation, and public educational opportunities. And the project is located within walking distance of local schools and is often used for class field trips. 6 interpretive signs will be placed along the trail, focusing on traditional ecological knowledge and the use of the area by the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows a couple of examples of the types of plants proposed to be used on the restoration. Blue Palo Verde on the left and Celia or brittle bush on the right. Locally sourced seed will be used for seeding and for propagation of the container stock. Next slide, please. Prescott Preserve has recorded 184 species of birds on the property. Several other species continue to utilize the area as a natural wildlife corridor, including coyotes, bobcats, rabbits, snakes, lizards, and so forth. The restoration of Prescott Preserve will ensure these species have a way to connect the valley floor to the mountains as they find food, water, shelter, and mates so they can continue to thrive in the desert environment. Next slide, please. So before I take questions, there was a couple of issues that were brought to my attention for this project. One was the absence of a fire plan, and the other one was herbicide use. And so I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about those. Jane Garrison, who's the executive director of Oswald Land Trust, has been in contact with the city of Palm Springs fire captain. And Oswald Land Trust is following the captain's recommendations and working closely with the Palm Springs code compliance. Part of the project under consideration today is the replacement of the old irrigation system. And the updated irrigation system will help support native plants during intense drought events and will also help support fire prevention efforts. Currently, cameras are deployed throughout the preserve and are monitored to prevent homeless encampments and to ensure no illegal activities are taking place. Dedicated staff and volunteers monitor, maintain, and inspect the property daily. So I just wanted to make that really clear that they're working on that. The second issue is the potential use of herbicides with this project. The herbicide questionnaire attached to the full agenda was actually for all three phases because at one time before our funding was swept, we were planning on taking all three phases to the board. So I will emphasize it was included with it, but we're only doing phase one, and Oswald Land Trust is deeply committed to not using herbicides, especially glyphosate, if at all possible. It is their goal to only use it as a last resort and only in small areas, specifically on the Bermuda grass that might be tricky to get rid of. A different herbicide would be used to treat stumps of tamarisk, as well as other invasive species such as stinknet, Sahara mustard, puncture vine, and non-native grasses. But it really, truly, you can even look at their website. They are very good about trying to minimize any sort of use of that. So with that, staff recommends the board approve the project as proposed. And here with us today to make a brief statement and answer any questions is Katie Barrows, Oswald Land Trust board member. And I can also take questions.
Great. Katie, why don't you come on up?
Good morning, Honorable Chair Bonham and members of the board. My name is Katie Barrows. I am a board member of Oswald Land Trust. I'm pleased to be here this morning. I've been fortunate to live in the Coachella Valley for 40 years and spent most of my career in habitat conservation. I want to say 40 years, I think that qualifies me as a desert rat. I'm definitely a desert fan. I'm really here this morning just to express appreciation from the board and staff of Oswald Land Trust for your consideration of our funding request. I also just want to say it's been such a pleasure working with your staff, your team. We are hopeful that this project would move forward, but Amy in particular has been a tremendous resource. Thanks for that very thorough staff report. And I think in closing, just want to really say thank you for getting us to this point for your entire team. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Katie. So we're going to come up for questions from board members for staff. And this is the moment. If you're in the audience here in the room and you'd like to make a public comment, please come down and queue on your left, our right, over in the aisle to the side of the auditorium. And then those online, please go ahead and raise your virtual queue. When we end board questions, we'll close that virtual queue. And I'm mindful on page 53 just the description of letters of support and some of opposition. I appreciate staff, kind of an extra focus on the fire dynamic. That's top of mind for elected officials. And I'm cognizant that Assemblymember Wallace, the mayor of the city, and city council members are all in support. I know they think about fire risk as well. So any questions from board members for staff about the project? Seeing none, I can see one person in queue here in the room. Come on up. And again, you're not required to, but if you're comfortable sharing your name, if you have any affiliation you're speaking on behalf of, and you'll see a 2-minute timer, particularly those that come online, and we'll try to use that as our guide.
As a lobbyist, I'm used to 30 seconds, so this is a luxury here. My name is Rico Mastrodonato. I'm the legislative director for the Trust for Public Land, and we're in strong support of this project, this restoration project. It, needless to say, checks virtually all of the 30 by 30 objective boxes, creating access. It's important to the restoration, creating habitat for listed species, but you know, the thing that's closest to our mission is the access point of it. You know, this is right near a densely populated, you saw in the picture, and I think the staff commented there, the walking distance from a densely populated community and a school as well. These are the kind of projects that we really, you know, in this day and age are really need to increase access for everybody across the state. And this is just a great example of, you know, working creatively to find those kind of things. So, and we've done golf courses ourselves, so we're in strong support of this and urge your support. Thank you very much.
Seeing no one else in the room for public comment, can we check if there's anyone in the online queue?
There's one raised hand.
Great.
Krista Hoffman, you can unmute yourself. Oh. You can unmute yourself.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Krista Hoffman. I am the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Integrated Pest Management Coordinator. And I'm here to comment to indicate my support for the invasive management methods that are included in the restoration project. The Prescott Preserve Ecological Restoration Project uses a variety of weed management and site preparation approaches that really only includes herbicides, where other methods would be ineffective or would cause more severe environmental impacts. Especially tamarisk and Bermuda grass are incredibly difficult invasive species to control through physical means alone, due to their extensive root systems and remarkable ability to resprout from fragments. Manual removal or mechanical efforts are often ineffective and inadvertently spread the plants. In contrast, the targeted use of systemic herbicides can effectively kill the entire plant, including its underground structures, and preventing regrowth, which allows for the successful restoration of native ecosystems. So in these cases, applications of approved herbicides for controlling invasive plants pose a significantly lower risk to wildlife, environment, and people than do the invasive plants, which severely impact wildlife habitat and water use. I just want to make a note on glyphosate because it's a issue that's been of concern in the past. The aquatic formulation of glyphosate was determined to be the safest and most effective broad spectrum product for the control of Bermuda grass under the project. In addition to being highly effective on this target, glyphosate has no soil residual, which allows for seeding or planting immediately after treatment. And the best available scientific information at this time says that glyphosate, when used for invasive plant management projects in accordance with its label, including appropriate PPE and best practices, is low risk for wildlife applicators and the public. Thank you.
Thank you. And just confirming, no one else is in the online queue?
There are no raised hands.
Great. Come back up to board members for any additional questions or a motion. Seeing no questions, I'll make a motion to move this agenda item as recommended by staff. Great, roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas. Motion passes.
Congratulations.
Great. Okay, to discuss the CAL FIRE Travis Ranch Conservation Easement, we have Brian Gibson.
So in our geography, we're flying to the other end of the state for this item.
Thank you. So this proposal is to consider the acquisition of a conservation easement on behalf of the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection and the allocation of a grant to CAL FIRE by the Wildlife Conservation Board to assist with the acquisition. The conservation easement will protect approximately 12,029 acres of land in Trinity County containing significant forest, natural, ecological, and open space conservation values. Travis Ranch is a working ranch located approximately 10 miles south of the community of Ruth in southwestern Trinity County. The property is currently managed for a combination of cattle, timber, recreation, and wildlife habitat. Elevations range from approximately 1,200 to 4,100 feet. Vegetation types identified on the property include timberland, oak woodland, mixed hardwood, mixed forest land, grassland, and chaparral. Conservation of the property would link the Yola, Boley, Middle Hill Wilderness Area to the North Fork Wilderness Area, connecting over 200,000 acres of protected wilderness lands. Next slide, please. The purposes of the easement are to maintain and enhance the generative potential of the property, including its capacity for productive timber harvesting and livestock grazing, maintain or enhance the property's wildlife habitats, watersheds, and primary ecological functions, and maintain and enhance the property's relatively natural, scenic, and open space characteristics. No use or activity on the property would be permitted that is inconsistent with these purposes or that would result in the impairment of the property's conservation values. Next slide, please. The property is intersected by the wild and scenic North Fork Eel River and encompasses documented habitat for the federally threatened summer run steelhead trout. There are 7 distinct watersheds on the property that drain into the North Fork Eel River, each with associated riparian areas and headwater stream habitats. By establishing riparian corridors and by using a variety of other provisions to protect water quality and riparian forest habitats, the watershed values of this expansive ecosystem will be preserved through the conservation easement. Next slide, please. The proposed conservation easement is needed to ensure the property remains intact and prevent subdivision and development, to protect critical wildlife habitat, including extensive forests and woodlands, protect water quality, and to reduce potential for catastrophic wildfire and associated health risks to nearby communities. Next slide, please. CAL FIRE will enter into a memorandum of understanding with North Coast Regional Land Trust for the purpose of monitoring the property for compliance with the terms of the conservation easement. The easement allows access by CAL FIRE or their agents annually and once every 3 years for WCB staff for monitoring purposes. Staff recommends that the Wildlife Conservation Board approve this project as proposed, approve the acquisition of a conservation easement totaling 12,029 acres on the behalf of the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, allocate $2,979,990 for the grant to CAL FIRE, and authorize staff to proceed as substantially as planned. And in the audience is Zach Wenderott. He's with North Coast Regional Land Trust. He'd like to say a few words. Jeremy Hendrick, he's a representative for the property owner, Travis Ranch LLC. He'd like to say a few words as well. And then finally, on Zoom, we've got Kevin Canary with CAL FIRE, and he will be available for questions.
Great. Let's first turn to our 2 guests who'd like to say a word. I think they're right here in the front row.
Morning, board. Thank you very much. I'm Jeremy Hydrick and I'm representing Travis Ranch LLC. And
Make sure you're in the microphone, just so people online.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Hydrick and I'm representing Travis Ranch LLC. And I prepared a little summary here. Ownership purchased the ranch in 2010 as a working cattle ranch and family retreat. Because 12,000 acres of contiguous undeveloped land adjacent to the North Fork Eel and the Yellow Bully and the North Fork Wilderness area. Pretty special place. Recognizing that you know, family goals might change in future generations, we decided to try to keep the Travis Ranch undeveloped into perpetuity. So we pursued the conservation easement and, you know, recognizing that, yeah, things might change in the future with the family. This will keep it preserved in one contiguous block, you know, with some great protection of important critical wildlife habitat and watershed. So thank you very much.
Zach. Good morning to the chair and members of the board. My name is Zach Winderot, and I'm here on behalf of the North Coast Regional Land Trust to express my strong support for the Travis Ranch Conservation Easement and to thank the Wildlife Conservation Board for your consideration of funding for this project. At over 12,000 acres, the Travis Ranch represents one of the few remaining privately held landscapes of this scale in our region. Upon its completion, this project will be the largest completed conservation easement project in Trinity County to date. It would also represent the second largest project that our organization has completed. And it'll bring our total acreage of conserved land to over 77,000 acres since its conception 25 years ago. So this property alone will represent over 15% of the conserved land that we've managed to protect in 25 years. So it's absolutely monumental opportunity for land conservation in our region. By keeping large properties like the Travis Ranch whole and undeveloped, we help to sustain the agricultural and timber-based economy that helps define our rural region, while also ensuring long-term benefits for fish, wildlife, and the future generations of the surrounding area. Thank you for your continued support of wild and working landscapes in Northern California.
Thank you, Zach. So if there are other public that would like to comment, please queue on the left side of the room. And then this is the moment, if you're online, to raise your hand. Coming back up to board members, any questions for staff? And also we have CAL FIRE on the phone if you have questions for them.
I have. Hi, thank you for the presentation again. And it's always exciting to see a project of this scale because it is important. And it's one of the exciting things about working in the North is you still have projects of this scale to do. But I did have a couple of questions because I have a background in these kind of easements as well. So the staff report mentioned that there were forest reserves and there are protections of wildlife habitat, but could you explain a little bit more what it means to be in a forest reserve in terms of this easement? Are there harvest restrictions or how is the forest going to be kept intact and enhanced over time?
I could actually answer a little bit of that, but I think that CAL FIRE might be better to answer that.
Why don't you start?
You want me to start? Yeah, so there's, I think there's 5 different, protected zones. There's the forest reserve areas, there's the riparian areas. And basically what it does is it prevents cutting of timber to certain degrees. No development within the reserve areas. Basically protected for wildlife habitat. I mean, there's kind of a long list of things, but essentially you're trying to keep it as preserved as it can be, as untouched. So are you talking about specifically for the forest reserve area?
Yeah, let's see if we've got the CAL FIRE person in the queue ready to speak on the specific question directed at the forest reserve aspect. CAL FIRE, are you there?
Kevin Canary, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members of the board. This is Kevin Kinnery. I'm the Forest Legacy Program Coordinator for CAL FIRE. Yeah, Brian was doing a great job describing what the purpose of the forest reserves are for. It's just to preserve you know, the forest and have limited forest management in those areas. There are allowances for salvage and forest health treatments to keep the forest protected. And but what Brian was summarizing is the purpose of those forest reserves.
So just to further on, is there still active management in the forest reserves, or is salvage would be if you had disease or fire or something?
So Kevin, you might want to chime in. My understanding is it's been a while, to be honest with you, since I looked at the exact, definition of what they can and can't do, but there's limited, harvesting, there's limited, ability to go in and take out dead woods, things like that. They're trying to keep them as preserved as possible in their natural state. But I couldn't tell you, I don't know if Kevin can exactly what they can and can't do as far as how much timber they can take out, how much, basically, I know essentially you can't build in them. They're, but as far as taking out timber, and trying to leave it as natural for wildlife, maybe Kevin can answer that a little bit better than I can.
Yeah.
So with the specifics on the timber operations, I'd say right now we're currently working with a forest health grant to restock approximately 1,500 acres of timber. So we're doing active restocking, active management. With the August complex fire, we dealt with salvage logging. The prior ownership back in the early 80s had done a significant timber harvest in the area. From a overall economics, we don't envision timber operations as part of our ongoing operations there. And right now it's just the general, the restrictions on with the conservation easement will help reinforce our management of just cleaning up the timber stands, enhancing the timber stands so that they can improve habitat and things like that. But it's not we don't consider it an active timber ranch. Timber's not a significant portion of the revenue to carry operating costs and covering costs.
If I might, board member, just a quick follow-up. My understanding is a term of the conservation easement will be a requirement to produce a timber management plan in consultation with CAL FIRE. Is that correct?
Correct. Subject to everything under the forest services act.
And there's a forest management plan on the property that protects everything basically as discussed in the easement. But yeah, as far as the forest reserve, I couldn't tell you the exact, but it's basically to keep it in its natural state. And I can get back to you on that though, if you like.
All right, thank you. And then just another question, just for clarification again, because there's limited development in the development areas, but there wasn't a description of how big is the development. I recognize this is pretty remote area, but are we talking about 10-acre sections, or are we talking about 100
Yeah,
acres?
there's multiple development areas totaling about 86 acres across the 12,000 acre property. So pretty small development areas.
Okay.
Some of the development areas already have homes or cabins on them. But 86 acres total, which I thought was pretty small, over 12,000 acres.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other board member questions?
May I just note for the record, we did receive one additional letter of support after the deadline. Thanks.
Okay, looking over to the room, I don't see anyone in the public queued up for public comment. And we'll go online and see if there's anyone in the online queue.
There is one raised hand, Shane Green. You can unmute yourself.
Shane, you there? Give it a second for Shane to find the mute button. Checking one more time with our IT folks. Can you tell if Shane is able to comment? Okay, we'll come back and see if Shane fixes that in a moment. Any other thoughts or questions Board members, I see Senator Pavley.
Yeah, just a comment. I'll be supporting this today, but as money gets perhaps tighter this next fiscal year, I may be looking at factors that could enter in when it's so competitive for limited funds. And I do have concern if we have too many places that don't allow any public access. And I know, what is it, Director Norris, I think it's something like 40% of our funds have to go towards disadvantaged communities and with public access there, or if too many have herbicides, especially glyphosate and things like that, it may put you in my mind, maybe not as high a priority as some of our outstanding ones. And also the one factor that we can't control, but national forest lands or BMLW lands, and what happens with the federal government as far as their push for more oil and gas drilling and timber on those lands. And then also long-term, my continued concern is operation and maintenance, because I've seen the bad years where the Department of Fish and Wildlife has had to make some really tough choices when they didn't have the money to operate and maintain them. But that's not applicable. 3 of those 4 aren't applicable to this project. I'll be supporting it today, but I have concern as money tightens up, how to reward our most outstanding applicants.
Thank you, Senator. Just quick check. Did we solve Shane's problem for joining?
Only if you can hear me now.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. And I'll try to be quick. I was trying to get a quick answer in to address Board Member Gear's question there. And on those forest reserves, yeah, basically management occurs in those pursuant to a habitat enhancement plan approved by the grantee. In this case, so it's really designed for only certain circumstances where management is determined to be needed to enhance the wildlife characteristics and or make it a more resilient forest so that it can persist into the future and serve those wildlife functions. And it's a similar arrangement down in the forest along the streams in order to protect the wildlife values down there and keep more resilient forests to provide watershed values. Lastly, on that, there is one oak woodland reserve that's in a large oak woodland area, and there is a little bit more active management allowed there, just in order to be able to keep out the competing conifers that over time will take over that native habitat and degrade it for wildlife use. So that's kind of the way that lays out in the conservation easement. I want to thank the board for its opportunity for considering this and for the opportunity to answer that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Okay, coming back up, seeing if anyone wants to make a motion.
I just wanted to say this was a great discussion. I'll be supporting this project. Just a note of appreciation to the landowner and everyone who's worked on this. Folks had different choices to make, and I think when someone's making a choice for conservation, just a note of appreciation to the board for that. And I will move this project forward for approval.
Well said. Second. Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham.
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami.
Aye.
Member Gear.
Aye.
Member Pavley.
Aye.
Peralt.
Aye.
Member Thomas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Now, Brian Gibson again for Rancho Cañada Larga.
All right, flying back down south.
Okay, so Rancho Cañada Larga is approximately 6,500 acres in size and located east of State Route 33, north of the city of Ventura and unincorporated Ventura County. To the north and east of the property, it's mostly vacant and undeveloped hillside lands with scattered rural residential. There are equestrian properties in the community of Casita Springs to the west. To the south is primarily vacant and undeveloped hillside lands and scattered rural residential properties, as well as the Ventura oil fields. The topography on the property consists of moderately to steeply sloping hills, mountains, and ravines with low-lying valley in the southern half of the property. The historic ranch was a Mexican land grant and has been used for low-intensity grazing since the late 1800s. So as you can see in the slide there, it's basically the property is located between the city of Ventura and the city of Ojai. Next slide, please. Coastal sage scrub, grasslands, and healthy coast live oak woodlands dominate the landscape, with smaller areas of mixed chaparral, valley foothill riparian, and valley oak woodland habitat. Elevations on the property range from approximately 240 to 1,500 feet. Next slide, please. The property is currently used for cattle grazing, ranching, and rural residential, and is almost entirely vacant, undeveloped hillside lands with natural drainages. Canada Larga Road, shown in the picture here, is the only paved road on the property. Improvements consist of several small residential buildings in the southeastern portion of the property, as well as farming-related structures, including barns, corrals, water storage tanks, and troughs for cattle. Next slide, please. The greatest value to wildlife of a protected Rancho Canada Larga is the enormous size of the property. It by itself represents landscape scale ecosystem protection. There are 320 acres designated for critical habitat for California red-legged frog and designated critical habitat for Southern California steelhead on the property. The property also ranked high for California condor habitat. The property also includes 826 acres of the South Coast Missing Linkages Sierra Madre Castaic linkage, which provides for connections between the Ventura River Corridor, Santa Clara River Corridor, and Los Padres National Forest. Next slide, please. The property contains approximately 4 miles of Canada Larga Creek, shown in the picture, a seasonal stream that is one of the 5 major tributaries of the Ventura River, as well as numerous other creeks and drainages. Historically, cattle have not been excluded from the creeks, and as a result, riparian vegetation has been reduced, water quality impaired, and there is notable stream bank erosion on the property. Cattle grazing will be continued for fuels management, but in adherence with a grazing management plan that better protects biological resources. Next slide, please. The existing Sulphur Mountain Road Trail and trailhead will continue to be available to the public. Improvements to facilitate additional compatible public access will be implemented over time in compliance with land protection, restoration, and management plan of the property. And after the close of escrow, the Trust for Public Land may convey to the Barbareno Ventureno Band of Mission Indians or their affiliated nonprofit organization a deed of indigenous cultural conservation easement. I'd like to thank you for your time on this one and consideration. And in the audience is Alex Size. He's with the Trust for Public Land. And I believe on Zoom joining us is Matthew Vestudo. He's a chairman for the Barbareno Ventureno Band of Mission Indians. If you have any questions.
Thank you, staff. Let me turn to the chair of the Sovereign Nation. I don't know if you'd like to make any remarks. Apologies for not knowing you were on the line. We would have asked for your kind of engagement sooner. So let me turn it over online and see if the chair would like to make any comments.
I would be happy to, and thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. My name is Matthew Vestudo. I'm the chairman of the Barbareno Ventureno Band of Mission Indians. And I would like you to know that this is the land acquisitioned by the Spanish Padres when they first came to our territory. They used this land to support the mission. This is where our ancestors became vaqueros, learning how to work with horses, to work with sheep and cattle. It is the oldest grazed land in our territory. It is in desperate need of healing. And when this property went up for sale, we went to the land and laid down a prayer, and many wonderful things have happened since this prayer, and culminating in this effort by the Trust for Public Lands and their inclusion of us. And we're very grateful for this partnership. And just want to keep it brief because I know you're very busy. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I just want to express that we are very, very supportive of this project and hope that you will also support it.
Chair, thank you for welcoming us into your world and seeing what we can do in partnership. I appreciate that. Let me just quickly see those in the room that would like to make public comment. Please feel to queue up. And then online, please raise your hand. Let's come up real quick though. Do any board members have questions for staff?
I have a quick question.
Great.
So is TPL going to convey the easement to the tribe or not? It says may, and I'm just sort of curious about the status of that.
We are, well, good morning. First of all, Alex Size, the Conservation Director for Southern California with the Trust for Public Land. We are in the midst of discussing the terms of that cultural easement, and the Trust for Public Land will acquire fee title to the property. Before we convey fee title to the ultimate owner and steward of the property, we will convey a cultural easement to the Barbareño Ventureño Band of Mission Indians. So that is our goal.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Any other folks in the audience that want to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, let's go.
We have someone online.
Yep, we're going to go back to the online and others besides the chair that would like to make comments online. Oh, Alex.
Just make a couple more comments. First of all, I thought 6,500 acres was a lot, but Travis Ranch kind of blew us out of the water. Just so much appreciation for the consideration here. This has been a long time coming. The community of Ventura has been fighting for this project for 40 years. The tribe obviously lost the property 200 years ago or more. In our conversations with partners, there's one overarching theme, which is the healing of this property. And we expect to do that with our partners through better land management, the restoration of Cañada Larga Creek. Again, 4 miles goes through this property of that creek, and then of course engagement with the tribe. Just want to say thank you for your hopeful support on this item. We're likely going to stay with the land, stay with this partnership, because this is just such a meaningful project to the community and of course to the tribe as well. So thank you for your time. And I just want to say it's great working with Brian. He's class act, and it's been a really great partnership. So thank you for your time. Yes.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, please open up the online queue, and each speaker, you'll see a clock pop on your screen, and we're going to use 2 minutes as a guide.
The previous speaker is some more comments.
Please.
So they'll go first.
This is the chairman, Matthew Vestudo again, and I'd like to add that so far as I know, and maybe it's not number 1 anymore, I hope it isn't, but Ventura County is one of the fastest warming counties in the nation. And the prospect of healing this land is not just going to be healing the land, but us as indigenous people, but also our relations to our neighbors. And the potential for this canyon and its restoration will to heal such a wide range of relations, and it will reverberate beyond the canyon itself. And it's, I think, an ideal opportunity for people to come together, to work together and forge new relationships, new models for bringing healing to and seeing the land not as something separate from us, but part of us. And again, thank you for your time. And I am Joaquin, that's all.
Thank you, Chair. Any other speakers in the queue?
We have one raised hand.
Please.
David, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm David Torfay. I'm an avian biologist, a botanist, a butterfly specialist, and a wildlife tracker. I have experienced Cañada Larga over the last 35 years or so as an amazing place, especially for birds, but other types of biota also. Yeah, roughly 12 or 13 years ago, it was threatened by the potential for subdivision into 10-acre ranchettes. Fortunately, the city of Ventura City Council did not okay that. There was a large public turnout for that hearing, and but the threat could still be there. So this prospect of it becoming part of the land trust is wonderful. The birds found in this area are amazing. Ventura Audubon, Conejo Valley Audubon, and other Audubon organizations in Southern California have visited over the years and seen what is there. Rare species and special status species have shown up in the canyon over the years. And anyway, you probably have a list of all those. So that's what I wanted to say. Helping put this in a conservation status will be a great thing.
Thank you, David. Any other speakers in the online queue?
There are no more hands.
Great.
And Chair, I just want to make sure I note for the record that we received 4 late letters of support on this project.
Any other questions? I'll make a motion to approve the agenda item. Senator, did you have a?
I'd be glad to second that. And just one comment, I represented Ventura County, not this particular area, but most of it, and know the area very well. And I taught nearby for about 25 years. But I would like to comment that how popular this is in Ventura County. You know, it's one of those counties that doesn't have the luxury of the conservancy or large sums of money. But I've noticed the private donations and the Whole Fast Collective, it's almost a matching funds situation, and that tells you the support. And I want to let you know that Assemblymember Steve Bennett and Senator Monique Limon are very strong supporters of this, and they're going to be thrilled.
Hey, so if you do me a favor, I'll withdraw my motion. Could you make the motion?
That's okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami, Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas. Motion passes.
Congratulations.
Very exciting. I mean, if there's a groundbreaking, we'll invite you, Senator Pavley, along with everyone else, but you'll have to come, or a ribbon cutting, I should say. Okay, moving along to Tullarcitos Creek. Michael Shaw will be presenting. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning, everyone. So the Tullarcitos Creek project is a 1,720 acre fee title acquisition by the Esalen tribe of Monterey County, located along Carmel Valley Road, about 7.5 miles east of Carmel Valley in Monterey County. The landscape forms a vital wildlife corridor between the Sierra de Salinas to the north and the Santa Lucia Range to the south, linking to the adjacent 12,422 acre Reyna Creek Preserve. Just 5 miles southwest of the property lies the 1.75 million acre Los Padres National Forest. The acquisition of the 1,720 acres of the historic Reyna Creek Ranch to the Esalen people ensures that the property will be owned and stewarded by the Esalen and will be restored to enhance biodiversity. Permanent protection of this property expands safe wildlife movement areas, protects watersheds, cultural sites, and landscapes that have significant value and cultural importance to the Esalen people, as well as offers future public access and presents a multi-impact project that advances state and national goals to achieve Pathway 30 by 30 goals. Next slide, please. The property is primarily comprised of oak woodland savanna, chaparral, wetlands, vernal pools, wet meadows, native grasslands, and riparian habitats, including over 4 miles of creeks, including the Tullarcitos Creek, along with numerous vernal pools and springs that provide habitat for threatened and endangered species. The property is currently utilized as ranch lands for cattle grazing. Once the property is acquired, the tribe plans to conduct significant riparian restoration of the Tullarcitos Creek corridor, which has been degraded as a result of erosion from upstream agriculture, roads, and development. Next slide, please. The property contains habitat for several covered animal species, including the California red-legged frog, California tiger salamander, and foothill yellow-legged frog. The property provides habitat connectivity and wildlife corridor via the Sierra de Salinas to the north and the Santa Lucia Range to the south, as well as the adjacent Reyna Creek Preserve, which the Esalen tribe co-manages with the Wildlands Conservancy. Returning these parcels to the Esalen ownership will help ensure these essential conservation efforts are successful in restoring wildlife populations and keeping the land accessible to diverse wildlife populations. Next slide, please. The Esalen tribe of Monterey County will own and manage the property. The Esalen's management goals include the prioritization of community wellness, restoration and enhancement of biodiversity and climate resilience, including riparian corridor restoration, restoration of Esalen tribal food sovereignty, restoration of ancestor oak trees, a return of cultural fire, sharing of Esalen cultural traditions, and protection of cultural and ecological resources of the land. Once acquired, the tribe plans to return nature-based practices to the land, guided by Esalen tribal ecological knowledge. In addition, the tribe plans to implement youth education programs geared towards teaching Esalen culture and land stewardship practices to youth in the region. Next slide, please. The fair market value of the property was approved by the Department of General Services for a total of $10,300,000. The landowners agreed to sell the property at a reduced price of $8,550,000. WCB will provide $6,550,000, and the Coastal Conservancy will provide the remaining $2 million. Staff recommend that the project is approved as proposed in the agenda. With us today, I'd like to introduce Tribal Administrator Jana Nason, Executive Director of the Wildlands Conservancy, Fraser Haney, and Kat Hardesty Cranstone, Preserve Manager for the Reyna Creek Preserve, who can assist with any questions you have regarding the project. But now I'd like to hand it over to Jana Nason, followed by Kat, who would like to say a few words about the project.
Selekia Satsa, Nashishmap Jana. Good morning. My name is Jana Nason. I'm an Esalen Rumsen descendant, and I have the great honor and privilege of getting to serve my tribal community as well as our ancestral lands and waters. Before I proceed, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd like to honor my elders and see if our tribal chairman's in the queue online, if you'd like to speak before I proceed with my comments.
Absolutely. Might take a moment for.
What is their name?
Tom Little Bear Nason.
Can you raise your hand?
Little Bear, are you online? Maybe not.
There are currently no raised hands, but I'll keep an eye out.
Thank you.
Problem. Well, we are deeply honored and grateful to be reconnected with these ancestral lands and to have them returned to our people. I've driven past this piece of property almost every day my entire life, and it's been quite elusive. We're really honored and grateful for our partnership and our steadfast friendship with the Wildlands Conservancy and all of the support from Wildlife Conservation Board and California Natural Resource Agency in helping to uplift our vision the past few years. I want to honor our tribal chairman, who has known for a long time what type of conservation projects need to happen in our area, and it is just an honor to get to be a part of that and the overall movement. We are very eager to start projects on this property. We want to almost immediately start working on that riparian restoration and the removal of some very aggressive purple star thistle and other non-native invasives that are making themselves quite comfortable there. This property offers us an opportunity to connect with our community more and our ancestral lands, and it's very accessible. A school bus can just pull right into the gate and drop school children off. And it's hard to describe the words and the feelings of getting to participate in something like this and being reunited with our with our sacred lands. This entire natural and cultural landscape is so significant. I was out there hiking recently and I came down this ridge that was covered in oak woodland, and right at the bottom at the confluence of two tributaries was an incredible bedrock mortar. And they just keep revealing themselves the more that we're out there. The lands also, it's already offered us opportunities. Just a few short weeks ago, we held our first Central Coast Intertribal Wildland Fire Training, where we had over 30 participants and 10 tribal nations represented. And we had a very heavy emphasis on cultural fire and cultural learning opportunities there. So we are really excited to connect with our neighboring tribes and our community to help uplift the community and other tribes' voices in stewarding their ancestral lands. So just thank you so much. We're deeply honored and grateful to get to work alongside everybody and everybody who works on these projects to help us with our overall goal of 30 by 30 and a healthier Mother Earth. So thank you so much.
If I might, real quick, I would actually say on behalf of us, we owe you the thank you. You're doing what's right and just, and our opportunity to be involved in that helps us heal. I am getting emotional as I get older in life. And at any given moment, if you look broadly and externally, the weight of the world can be overwhelming. To just have a small part of something like what you're doing, we owe you a thank you. So we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Please. And then if you're in the audience and you have additional, you'd like to make your own public comments, please queue up on the left side of the auditorium. We'll go to the online after we come back up to board.
Thank you, Chair Bonham and board members for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kat Hardesty Cranstone and I represent the Wildlands Conservancy as the preserve manager at the Rana Creek Preserve. We hold the honor of partnering with the Esalen Tribe of Monterey County in co-stewarding the 12,000 acre Rana Creek Preserve in Carmel Valley. Our collective wisdom and love for the natural environment brings us together to manage this property with care and with a vision to restore biodiversity and create public access. We are grateful for the Wildlife Conservation Board's support of the initial acquisition of the preserve and appreciate your consideration today of the second and final phase in the acquisition. We also applaud WCB's commitment and leadership in land back initiatives, without which this project could not have happened. The Wildlands Conservancy proudly stands behind the Esalen Tribe's proposal to acquire the 1,720 acres of the historic Rana Creek Ranch, demonstrating a sacred return of their ancestral lands. The Esalen were the original caretakers and stewards of this remarkable landscape and have a fundamental connection to the trees, waters, rocks, and wildlife. Their intentions to share the landscape with the public, to restore sensitive habitats and design educational experiences for on-site learning will benefit the community, but most importantly, will reconnect tribal members with the landscape that they have always called home. Thank you for your consideration of the tribe's grant request and for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments, board members?
Well, just a comment that it is exciting to be part of a project like this, and I could hear the emotion in your voice, and it was making me emotional listening to it. So thank you. Thank you for stepping forward to steward the land, and thank you to the Wildlands Conservancy for being another amazing partner. I know that you're working with tribes throughout the state and helping to bring more of these kinds of projects together. So thank you.
Let me see if there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comments. I don't see a queue. Oh, one more. And then just foreshadowing, we're going to the online queue next if there is one.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Isabel Mesa, and I'm here on behalf of State Senator John Laird, just sharing our support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, please.
Good morning. My name is Shawnee Briggs, and I'm a southern neighbor to the Esalen And I just want to say that I took part in the fire camp, and I've had the privilege of working with them for the last few years. And they have given us, or some of us, the hope and inspiration to do things like this. And there's so much potential for restoration on this beautiful land. It will be in good hands. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, do we have any public commenters in our online queue,
There's one raised hand.
please?
David, you should be able to unmute yourself.
David. Such an odd dynamic. It feels like I'm talking to the heavens. David, are you there?
David, we can see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
We'll circle back to that in a minute and come up to the dais. Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Technology, do we have a fix for David?
No, I think it's probably on there.
Apologies, David. Anyone like to make a motion for this agenda item?
I would happily move this project.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay, so
Observe the clock.
all right, so we're moving to agenda item 26, a couple of housekeeping items. So we did post in our agenda, we would probably be taking a lunch break around noon. So just for planning purposes, we will have some discussion on this agenda item, I predict, because look, it's public forum and we create a space for those who have concerns to raise them. And this may take us right up to lunch. We'll see how it goes. But for those with interest in all the other agenda items, that's kind of the timing we're looking at. So staff presentation, and then we'll come back up for questions. We'll go to any comments, pro and con, and then we'll have a discussion.
Okay, I'm gonna invite Daniel Vasquez to give a presentation. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you. This proposal is to consider the grant of perpetual right-of-way easement from CDFW to DWR, allowing additional.
Could I
lighting-
actually, just one, I forgot an additional housekeeping thing. Just for the record, Tina, I don't know if you want me to do it on your behalf or you'd like to say anything, but just following really good government, kind of transparency and, leadership in our newest board member. I think we'll have Ms. Thomas recuse herself. She's doing that voluntarily just to make sure we're kind of as we should be in the good government space. Tina?
Right. I am going to recuse myself as I have represented one of the members of the partnership of Conaway.
So let the record reflect that Ms. Thomas will kind of step out of the room for purposes of this agenda item. So let's give that a second, actually. Everybody's doing okay.
That was a low top.
Yes.
So why don't we proceed with the staff presentation?
Thank you. This proposal is to consider the grant of a perpetual right-of-way easement from CDFW to DWR, allowing additional flooding to develop and support some mounted habitat and fish passage. The easement covers 14,100 acres of CDFW's 16,770 acre Yolo Bypass wildlife area. It supports DWR's Yolo Bypass Salmonid Habitat Restoration and Fish Passage Project, commonly referred to as the Big Notch Project. Big Notch is a 30,000 acre project in the Yolo Bypass that allows increased flow from the Sacramento River to enter into the bypass through gates at Fremont Weir. The Yolo Bypass wildlife area is located between the cities of Davis and West Sacramento. Next slide, please. The wildlife area was acquired for the preservation of historic wetlands, wintering habitat for waterfowl, shorebirds, threatened and endangered species, and wetland-associated species. Thousands of visitors hunt, fish, hike, and drive on auto loop tours in the wildlife area. Higher flows are anticipated to modify public access on the property. Next slide, please. The Big Notch project will improve connectivity within the Yola bypass for passage of salmonids and green sturgeon. It does so by allowing flows of up to 6,000 CFS from November 1st to March 15th annually through DWR gates at Fremont Weir. The easement allows for flows up to 12,000 CFS contingent upon environmental review to provide flexibility for adaptive management. Due to increase in floodplain inundations, the wildlife area will be flooded for more days annually, and it may be flooded to a higher elevation level during the flood season between November and June. Next slide, please. The easement was appraised at $6,536,000, and CDFW is being compensated for it through provisions within an MOA between CDFW and DWR, which is not yet fully executed. Per the MOA, compensation for the easement will come in the form of physical improvement projects at the wildlife area. DWR's implementation of these physical improvement projects is capped at $9,130,000. An interagency agreement between CDFW and DWR, which is not yet fully executed, separately provides payment for new CDFW positions in the wildlife area as compensation for anticipated increases in CDFW workload and expected annual losses in hunting and grazing lease revenue. WCB's execution of the easement is contingent upon CDFW and DWR executing both the interagency agreement and the MOA. Here to answer any specific questions are Aaron Chappelle and Garrett Spahn from CDFW, and Liz Vasquez, Rachel Taylor, and Catherine McKelvin from DWR.
Yes, please.
Just for the benefit of the audience, some people may not know that the Wildlife Conservation Board executes easements on behalf of the Department of Fish and Wildlife as a longstanding practice. So if you're wondering why we're here at all, we're sort of the real estate paperwork people for the department.
That's right. So we'll come back up and any questions first, and then we'll go to comments and just a few observations using my voice for a quick moment as the department director. Yes, as Jen just mentioned, in this scenario, the Wildlife Conservation Board is more akin to the department's escrow agent. I mean, you have those responsibilities to manage our real estate transactions. That's embedded in statute and, 75 years of kind of dynamic. Second, the department has a foot in each of our communities, whether they are supportive of this effort or they oppose this effort. So we own this kind of downstream wildlife refuge. It's a classic feature in the regional landscape. We love it. And we love our partners that help us maximize its use, like the Yolo Basin Foundation, which I believe has submitted a letter of opposition requesting kind of delay for purposes of this item. Simultaneously, we have a love-hate relationship, honestly, with our sister agency, the Department of Water Resources, but we get a lot of stuff done that's progressive. And in this case, it is a fact that I hear often, particularly with the surge of the abundance movement. Why does it take so long to do stuff? I hear that from the housing industry, the development industry, the transportation industry. It's legit. And the reality here is this particular project was required by law, federal approvals in 2008. We are 30 years late doing a project. So we also have a deep partnership with landowners in the bypass and have done great conservation work on their properties. And some of those perspectives are in opposition to this project. The question in front of the Wildlife Conservation Board is one of more ministerial approval, in my opinion, even though we must acknowledge there's underlying existing litigation about the larger policy and kind of CEQA dynamics around the actual project. So with that, It's unusual. This board takes up a complicated thing that does engender kind of that healthy discussion about pros and cons, but here we are. Any questions for board members to any of our staff? And then we will be going to, sufficient public comment, which I anticipate is both pro and con. Vice Chair.
Thanks, Chuck, for that background. I guess if you could just restate what you're asking the board for approval for, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, staff, you want to, but I can also.
It's approval for us to execute an easement granted from the CDFW to DWR that allows them to operate their project on the property. So we're granting them rights. CDFW will maintain ownership of the property, but they'll allow for DWR to operate their project.
And in some sense, that easement is basically encroachment of floodwater on our property. Which, notably the record indicates and we acknowledge does have impact for some of those important uses, balanced with the project anticipates significant salmon benefit. Like that's the department having a foot in each of the issues that's at play.
And just for clarification, the easement doesn't require DWR to do this. It just allows them to do these activities, correct?
Yes. it gives
So
them
if
the
the
right to
controversy
do
were to
it.
continue, there would be other forums for it to continue in. Okay.
Looking around, seeing if there's other questions from board members. Seeing none at the moment. Let's go to those that might be in the room. Feel free to kind of queue up. I suspect we have at least a couple. We will be going to online queue next. We'd ask you to kind of keep an eye on the 2-minute, but this is important. I'm not going to bang the gavel when we get to 0 on the allotted clock. So please come on up. And if you feel comfortable introducing yourself, kind of any affiliation or representation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. My name is Casey Shorrock. I'm an attorney with Somex Simmons and Dunn, and I'm representing Conaway Preservation Group. Last week, Conaway submitted a comment letter to the board on this agenda item number 26 that we hope you've received and have had a chance to review. I have copies here. Should I leave them with someone?
You're more than welcome to.
You can give it. Great.
We just acknowledge receipt, and at least I, and I'm sure my board members have reviewed the letter.
Yeah, the attachments aren't included. Obviously, they're lengthy, but there's a link to them in the comment letter itself. They're online. Some of you may be aware, sounds like most of you are, that Conaway owns more than 17,000 acres in the Yolo Bypass used for agricultural and recreational purposes, which is why operation of Big Notch is of the utmost importance to Conaway. It's in this context that Conaway reluctantly opposes this proposed easement at this time. Conaway would prefer to support this easement and to support Big Notch in its totality, and has spent considerable time and resources trying to reach a sensible resolution that allows Big Notch to operate and also minimizes negative consequences on Conaway's land and the operation of other agricultural and recreational land in the bypass. Unfortunately, no resolution has yet been reached, but Conaway hasn't given up. Operation of Big Notch as currently constructed and as currently planned by Department of Water Resources comes with several significant environmental impacts that have yet to be sufficiently analyzed by any involved agency in violation of the California Environmental Quality Act. And this is why Conaway is here today, to inform the board that this easement grant will violate CEQA in at least a couple of ways. First, the easement grant has been inaccurately described. The agenda describes flows limited to 6,000 cubic feet per second from November 1st through March 15th. But we now know that DWR has constructed Big Notch to flow double that amount, up to 12,000 cubic feet per second past March 15th, and has aggressively sought several private and public easements to operate Big Notch at 12,000 cubic feet per second, well past March 15th, including this easement. The agenda also wrongly claims that this easement grant is exempt from CEQA review under Public Resources Code Section 21080.28. This exception doesn't apply here, unfortunately, for several reasons that we explain in our letter. This obviously is the subject of litigation. Chair Bonham mentioned that earlier, against Department of Water Resources by several parties. This is an issue that impacts a lot of people and a lot of agriculture, important agriculture. CEQA requires that the project be accurately described and its impact sufficiently analyzed so that stakeholders like Conaway can meaningfully consider the impacts to the bypass, to their land, to their operations, to the environment in general. So today we request that this easement grant not be approved, that more consideration be given to this matter until the grant can be properly described and its impacts adequately analyzed by someone. Thank you very much for your consideration and this opportunity to comment. I'm happy to answer any questions or try to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you. Stay close. There may be, further deliberation and questions. Great. Next speaker, please. Hello.
Good morning. My name is Robin Kaleko. I'm the founding executive director of the Yolo Basin Foundation. I led the grassroots effort to establish the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area in the early 1990s. I currently hold the position of policy director. Today, I am speaking on behalf of the Yolo Basin Foundation. Since 1998, we've supported balanced multi-benefit use of the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area, including habitat, flood management, agriculture, and public access. We respectfully urge the board to pull agenda item 26 and delay action on the proposed Big Notch easement. The foundation and other key stakeholders received no notice from WCB of this item, and we only had a short opportunity to prepare comments that were submitted in a letter to the board dated May 19th. The staff report says there's no opposition. That is simply because there was no outreach. The proposed easement would allow operations well beyond what was originally analyzed for the Big Notch project, doubling flow capacity to 12,000 CFS and potentially extending the flooding season into May. These changes raise serious concerns that have not been evaluated through environmental review or any public process. Prolonged inundation would reduce wetland suitability for migratory birds, disrupt wildlife-friendly agriculture that fund the wildlife area operations, and significantly delay or block access needed for habitat management, recreation, and environmental education. It would also increase maintenance costs for already strained infrastructure. Recent DU studies also suggest DWR's original project modeling underestimated impacts, including delayed drainage times, an issue the staff report does not address. We urge the board not to approve the easement today. Please allow time for full public review, assess the adequacy of mitigation plans, and preserve the board's future oversight if impacts worsen or operations expand. I've been working on this project a very long time. It's very beloved by the local community. There is active gathering of plant material by Native people. And well, most of you know how wonderful the place is, and it's going to change, and not for the better. Thank you for your stewardship and for considering our concerns.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Martha Diepenbrock, and I've followed Robin as the executive director, currently the executive director of the Yellow Basin Foundation. These are challenging times. We recognize the competing and conflicting interests sometimes in land management. And I was listening to the Salton Sea discussion about an emerging project. This is one that started probably one of the first multi-benefit projects in the state in the early 90s and has realized all of the benefits that have been described and hoped for. Since the 90s, we've had 82,000 young people come through field trips to the wildlife area, and probably 10,000 people every year who participate in our programs. The 4,000 who come to the Bat Talk and Tour, in addition to field trips and wetland experiences. So we're just urging, the continued partnership on this project. As Robin mentioned, there's been extensive conversations over many years. We're urging that dialogue be continued and that the capacity of this project to increase beyond the previous discussion be honored. So we urge again that you pull the item for continued conversation. Thank you.
I'm just looking out at the audience. I don't see any other speakers in the room queued up. So let's go to our online queue. And first, do we have folks online? And if so, how many of them?
There is one raised hand. James, you should be able to unmute yourself.
So James, please keep an eye on the 2 minutes, but because of the importance of the discussion, I'm going to hold you strictly to that.
Thank you, Wildlife Conservation Board. My name is James Newcomb. I'm the Deputy Director of Natural Infrastructure and Ecosystem Resilience for Department of Water Resources. And I've been working on the Big Notch project for about the past 10 years. And I wanted to just quickly point out that, yes, the project that we are implementing is alternative one in the EIR EIS. Yes, that project was designed to be operated at a flow of 6,000 CFS. Because at those flows, we expect the best benefits for fish and the best, benefits for adult fish migration and juvenile habitat. We also understand that there's a significant amount of uncertainty with any habitat restoration project, and we need to be able to have some ability to adaptively manage that project. And so the project itself has always had the ability to have more than 6,000 CFS flow through it, and its hydraulic capacity happens to be 12,000 CFS. But that 12,000 CFS could only be achieved just before Fremont Weir would have otherwise overtopped and completely flooded the Yolo bypass. And so I think it's important to note that while it does represent a doubling of flow, it actually on the ground represents just a 7% increase in inundated area. And that 7% increase in inundated area could be very critical to making sure that we can maintain adult fish passage for endangered species like green sturgeon and winter run salmon. It's just something we won't know until we have years to operate the facility. But it takes years to acquire real estate permissions, and we can't find ourselves in a position where we're not able to maximize the benefits of this project because we're concerned about not being able to adaptively manage the project. Beyond that, I want to say that I share Robin's and Martha's concerns about maintaining the wildlife area as a significant public resource and being able to maintain access through that area. And so we've worked really hard to secure federal funds to be able to improve drainage and improve access for people to be able to still get out into the wildlife area when Big Notch project is operational. Those federal funds, we need to be able to commit those as soon as possible to projects on the ground. And I worry about pulling this item from the board meeting today and deferring to a future meeting because we're trying to quickly capitalize on the availability of those funds now and have the material into on the ground improvements. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, so I think that's the end of the online queue. There looks to be no other public comment in the room. We have plenty of people if the board wants to direct a follow-up question. Let's come back up to board members and see if there's any discussion, question, comments. Vice Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I think So the WDR person, I think, started to answer one of my questions, which was there's been a request for a delay. Delaying to a future meeting sounds like would have consequences. So what about from the CDFW side? What would be the consequences of a delay? And also, I'm not totally clear what the request for delay, like how long of a delay. I know that there is litigation happening. Litigation can take a long time.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions.
Couple thoughts, and then let me also ask, kind of back myself out, ask DFW's regional staff to come on up on that front. So as I understand it, what the WCB is being requested to do at approval is separate from what appears to be, existing litigation against a different state agency which must run its course. And so that's part of this. Second, I also believe on the DWR front, there are permit conditions involved that relate to time by which they need to make progress on Big Notch project. Those trace back to the biological opinions in 08 and 09, and they've carried forward in some of the state incidental take permits. The department is looking at impact to a property and acknowledges that. We are not yet done, but are engaged in a negotiation with DWR to compensate and mitigate those impacts. Funding for positions for staff at the refuge, other things to mitigate loss of hunting opportunity. Simultaneously, we are in the middle of crises every direction we look. And one of those includes the potential loss of salmon in California. You have seen previous items at this board and elsewhere where proponents are for putting fish on floodplains because floodplains is where fish grow better. And landowners in this bypass promote fish on floodplains. So there's a lot going on. I'm open to the board deciding that a consensus delay is warranted. But I also think the board would want to probe on what that means. And simultaneously, I could make the case the board is simply doing a ministerial real estate dynamic that could proceed in the context of all the other litigation that's playing out.
That's helpful. Can I maybe try to restate or maybe ask a question? So the litigation with DWR proceeds and there's a resolution that gets taken care of whether or not we approve the easement. If we approve the easement, at least it's in place in the event that litigation resolves itself. And then DWR can use the easement. Thank you.
And I think also in a moment, the board should, consult with its own counsel. It seems reasonably likely to me the board might engender, litigation on any approval. I think the board's counsel and materials indicate they feel comfortable on the exemption for the board's ministerial action. But parties avail themselves of the judicial, arm of government, that's fine. So Aaron, I don't know if you want to, on behalf of the department, express any feedback on the question, like what does delay mean relative to the department?
Hey, good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Chappelle. I currently serve as the Bay Delta Regional Manager for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, which includes the portion of Yolo County below I-5. So that encompasses the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area. I think in terms of delay, it's a question of how long of a delay. I think as James indicated, there is federal funding associated with the physical improvements. And there's always a certain amount of uncertainty there on availability and timing of that. I think to the extent that we are able to move those projects forward and acquire the staffing necessary helps buy the wildlife area a little bit of time to be ahead of the operations. which is an important consideration if we're trying to maintain access. And I think we can do that in a way that while all the other elements of this play out, it would at least enable us to move forward. I would also just note that the action being requested today is the approval of the 6,000 CFS, and that the additional flow and period past March 15th would come on that secondary analysis that has been requested. So at least in the short term, while all of those things are worked out, it at least allows us to move forward under what is currently permitted.
So, and just to follow up, because that was one of my questions, is there general agreement that the 6,000 CFS is acceptable? I'm saying a no from, okay, so.
I mean, the 6,000 will still have impacts to the wildlife area, which is why the physical improvement projects and additional staffing is needed. But as it relates to the larger question around 12,000 CFS, that would be contingent on a separate environmental review.
So look, I'll just, you can find yourself in moments where long-running partners and colleagues have differences of opinions. And, it makes it difficult. So.
All right, one more question. So say we pause. Is there a possibility this is not able to come up at a future meeting because some circumstances changed and there's no longer a willing, like what are the things that could change so that this might not come before us again? Like this could be the chance and something might change to where we wouldn't have the chance to do this again later.
So I'm totally tracking, and if you seek feedback from the kind of project owner, that's really a question directed to the DWR person in the queue. But I have stopped trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. I just think we live in complicated, chaotic times. And I'd also say in that context, these infrastructure modernizations that can produce ecosystem benefit while acknowledging impact right now relate to the larger state and federal water operations dynamics. And if you're watching more broadly at any given moment, it's really difficult to know what our partner, the Bureau of Reclamation, will or won't do for something that benefits salmon.
So I'm Liz Basmus. I'm with the DWR Program Manager for the Big Notch project, and have a little bit more information on a couple of these questions. So we are an operation period for Big Notch from November 1st to March 15th. That's full operation up to 6,000 CFS, which is our permitted amount that we wish to put through the facility. We have designed the facility for 6,000 CFS, optimized it for that amount for both fish passage for adult fish, as well for passage of juvenile fish from the Sacramento River into the Yola bypass to put onto the floodplains. The potential loss of opportunity, and I think that's where people are going, is that we could potentially be in a place where we don't have all the rights to operate November 1st of this year. The project is in commissioning. The structure is built, the gates are in, we are making sure that everything works together. So time is short. We have a lot of real estate that we're dealing with right now. So there's 46 different flowage easements that are moving through the process. You folks are one of many that we're dealing with right now. And we've done a lot of work to try and get to the potential effects to this very beloved wildlife area, and we completely acknowledge that. We spent
3 years negotiating on these different pieces. We've done a lot of joint science and a joint fact finding to try and address all those things that are anticipated for our operation. So we do hope that this is efficiently done. We also understand, though, that we have to be thoughtful when we're government employees and that we need to consider all the different interests that are out there. But really, it's that November 1st of this year operation that is really the target. And we all know that we never know what the hydrologic condition will be. We get into another drought cycle, it could be several years before we accrue some of those benefits to the fish populations that we're trying to protect.
So we'll just let it sit for a moment. And at this point, I'll just say for everyone watching, we will be going to lunch. That's agenda item. No added pressure. So we'll let it sit for a moment. So, we can have more discussion, questions welcomed. At some point, we'll have to see if anyone wants to make a motion or not.
Well, I guess I would just say from what you've just said that in order for you to move forward, the longest delay could be 2 months, the August board meeting, right? 3 months. Otherwise, you're put off for another whole year. And you're at risk of losing some, I mean, the project's already built, so I'm a little like, which funding would be lost, I guess, if the project's already built?
So the project was funded by federal money to build. So the construction was funded by a financial assistance agreement with Bureau of Reclamation, who's our federal lead. We had as part of that process them as a NEPA lead, and the financial assistance agreement that we're talking about supports effects that they identified during that process to deal with effects to recreation, as well as, the need to fulfill their requirement for effects to the project. So that is a separate financial assistance agreement. It is sitting waiting. It is fully funded, but we are looking forward to working with our YOLO folks to put all of those different projects. We have a list of priority projects that we would like to move forward on, but that work is waiting for some of these processes to come forward.
Okay, and if your permits are for the 6,000 CFS.
Correct.
So why do we have ongoing controversy about whether, wasn't there a public process to get through that permitting issue?
Yes.
Okay.
So the permitting process under the EIRS was for alternative 1. It's a 6,000 CFS maximum flow. That is what we have been permitted for. And I'm sure there's folks in this group that are familiar with fish passage constraints and criteria. And so to get to the maximum amount of time that we could have those benefits for fish passage and for rearing for juveniles, we wanted to be able to get to water moving from the Sacramento River into the Yolo bypass at a certain level. So we're not pumping water, right? We're dependent on the Sacramento River and what that elevation is. And so because of that, it had to be sized appropriately to be able to move that water into the Yolo bypass. Also, we wanted to make sure that if we had some change in the California climate, in the operation of the water systems overall, that we did have some flexibility and we didn't have to go back to those 46 different easement holders to try and get some adjustment in the amount of operation that we need to do. So in that instance, we have a permanent project for 6,000 CFS. That is what the project is built for. It is where we think the most benefit our fish are, and we have to do years and years of operation before we adjust any of that.
So from a certain way of my thinking, Karen, there's the larger dynamic that is clearly playing out related to a project and multiple landowners with legitimate interest And then there's the question that is this board today, like on behalf of our Department of Fish and Wildlife, the impact to our property and the easement related to it. And it's sometimes hard to figure out which part of this to engage on and kind of understand. So.
Chair Bonham, if I may, I think it might be helpful to clarify a bit for the board members. What the easement does is it gives DWR the right to pass flows through the weir at 6,000 CFS, which is what they're permitted to do from November 1 to March 15th. So it does that right off the bat. The additionality of flows up to 12,000 CFS, that's all contingent upon future environmental review. So that right cannot be exercised until DWR completes environmental review for flows up to 12,000 CFS. And the department would have to acknowledge that that environmental review is complete, which is consistent with the CEQA exemption that we proposed that you follow today if you do approve this project. So I hope that, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to that, but I think I just wanted to make it clear what the easement language does and what your approval today would accomplish as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's where I was going with my line of thought, is that this is already a permitted project. We're not doing anything that hasn't gone through a public review process and had all the benefits and impacts analyzed, and recognizing it's very hard to sometimes balance these things, for everybody has their own interests of what's important to them. But given that there would be a whole second step, and there would be, the department would be weighing in, the public would be weighing in, there's a lot more opportunity down the road. I just know how hard it is to line these projects up in timing. And sometimes it seems like a delay is, well, why not delay it? And then you realize you could be delaying for multiple years by the time you line everything up again. So I guess those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Gear. That was very helpful. And thank you, Council. That was also helpful. I am inclined to approve this easement, but I want to hear from maybe Council for Conaway, if you have any sort of rebuttal or anything else you want the board to know before we make a motion.
Yeah, thank you. And some of my thoughts aren't fully complete because we didn't get a lot of notification on this. The way that the agenda item is written is this action today would at least in part rely on language and a notice of exemption filed by the Department of Water Resources in 2022. That notice of exemption from CEQA review is relying on the same exemption that the board today would rely on, which we argue doesn't apply. It's inapplicable here. This action, I believe, would open the board up to litigation, possibly that it's a judicial action. The problem with this, the NOE, the 2022 NOE that issued by DWR, is that it in fact allows for flows above 6,000. It allows for flows up to 12,000 past March 15th. The language in attachment B of that NOE says that. This is a matter that's in litigation right now against DWR. I also just want to point out that we disagree with the way DWR has been characterizing Big Notch as it is today. And I just want to lay some facts out for this board's consideration. Big Notch project was approved to flow 6,000 CFS through the Yellow Bypass. It has been constructed, admittedly, by DWR to flow up to 12,000 CFS. They have been aggressively seeking, through condemnation action, easements from private landowners to flow up to 12,000 CFS past March 15th. And indeed, the grant of this easement today would allow them to flow 12,000 CFS. CEQA requires that environmental review occur prior to an action. It should have occurred prior to the construction of facilities that would have allowed the flow of 12,000 CFS. It did not. And what we're saying here is that environmental review has to occur before any more approvals are granted attached to the Big Notch project, because the project that was approved is not the project that was built, and it's not the project that DWR is seeking to operate. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, do you have a response?
Yeah, I think one thing I did want to respond to, and it's the third bullet under easement project highlights, where we reference flows over 6,000 up to 12,000 CFS, and we cross-reference a NOE that DWR filed. And I want to make it clear that the language within our agenda is language that we pulled from the easement. And the reference to DWR's NOE is not to quote unquote rely on that. It's to use it as a descriptive of the rights that we are granting to DWR contingent upon that future environmental review. So that NOE goes into a bit more detail about flows, directions of flows, and things of that nature. So that's what that cross-reference is intended to do. It's not intended to say that we're relying on that. Our CEQA compliance is based upon that they can flow 6,000 right now. They're permitted to flow 6,000. It's that step up from 6,000 to 12,000 CFS and potentially outside of the November 1 to March 15th that we've said none of that can occur. It's a contingent right within the easement until DWR has completed environmental review, which is precisely what the Public Resources Code exemption says, is that state agencies can give grants of interest in real property for specific purposes here, habitat restoration purposes, so long as that future environmental review for those impacts occurs. And the legislature's purpose there is because they understand that public agencies need to be able to conduct real estate transactions at times, knowing that future impacts may occur through a habitat restoration, but they can't necessarily analyze that at the time of the acquisition or of the grant of the real property interest. So that's why, you know, myself, our entire legal staff at WCB, as well as a lot of attorneys at the department's Office of General Counsel, we didn't just sort of like pull this out of our hat. We've been discussing this for months about what's the appropriate CEQA platform to propose to you. And we feel that this is the appropriate exemption to use for an approval of this project.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Curious, I don't have a legal background, but is that intent consistent with any motion of support that would be understood that exactly what he said is what
Yeah, I hope
we
so.
intended? I mean, that is, we're sort of debating back and forth the what ifs, and I know
Yeah.
the legal constraints, and I understand the federal problem too. But I wanted to make sure that that would be,
Well,
any
yeah,
motion to approve would be consistent with that.
yeah, I would, I mean, that was incredibly helpful, and that understanding would be what I would be basing a motion of to approve on. But just want to see if there are any other board, and apologies, Chair, for sort of
No, that's
taking
okay.
this.
Look, it's better that others have a full
Yeah.
discussion.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, why don't I make a trial balloon motion to go ahead and approve this item. Any second?
Second.
The roll call, please.
Chair Bonham, Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Motion passes.
And just for confirmation, Member Thomas did recuse herself and is not in the room for the discussion. Thank you. Okay, look, more to come in this project, and those that are longtime colleagues will just keep at it in those other venues. And let's take a lunch break. I think we noticed it for 30 minutes. Does that work for everybody? Okay. But we'll keep a quorum if we lose our illustrious Department of Finance member. No problem.
Brandis will leave it too.
So we'll see you back here at 12:50.
We've got him done by 2. Jenny.
Yep.
Thank you for that. That was well done.
And we do have a quorum of voting members. And we're kind of coming back from lunch. Let me check with technology and see if we're plugged back in for those watching online. Thumbs up from the room back there?
Yes.
All right. And just mindful of time and people needing to catch planes at some point in the afternoon. Let's go ahead and pick it back up. We left with agenda item 27. So same plan, staff presentations, board questions, we'll queue up comments, come back for deliberation motion. And we have 5 agenda items left with public forum for items not on the agenda at the end. All right.
All right, Alyssa, hello, Benedetti with Napa River Ecology Center.
Oh, did you need to say anything?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I can say it at the end or the beginning. Let's do it now since well, I have to find my paper. You go. I'm a little bit of a mess. Go.
Okay. Napa River Ecology Center, located at the edge of the Napa River wetlands in the city of American Canyon, fills a longstanding gap in wildlife education infrastructure in Napa and Solano counties. The site is within walking distance of 3 local schools and the Boys and Girls Club of Napa Valley Clubhouse. It is also a short drive from underserved communities in and around the city of Vallejo. Programs hosted at the center will focus on watershed ecology, wildlife, stormwater management, climate change history, and habitat restoration. Next slide, please. The project came about through a partnership between the City of American Canyon and the American Canyon Community and Parks Foundation to repurpose a former city maintenance lot. Sandwiched between protected marshlands and residential neighborhoods, the industrial site is not compatible with its surroundings. Repurposing the site for the benefit of the community and continued wetland stewardship aligns with the city's wetlands restoration plan. Next slide, please. This proposal will specifically fund construction of the indoor and outdoor teaching spaces, a wildlife viewing deck, and educational signage. The full project scope includes many more features such as raised garden beds, play structures, pollinator-friendly landscaping, and flex space for art and community events. Next slide. The Parks Foundation has been running several wetland and wildlife education programs for the past 10 years through their mobile classroom. Having a permanent facility right next to the wetlands will allow them to greatly increase their capacity and reach many more students and families. The Ecology Center will also provide a base of operations for continuing restoration work on the wetlands and workforce development through volunteer and internship opportunities. Next slide. The site contains a pump station, which must remain on site as it's part of the city's water supply infrastructure. So the solution was it was incorporated into the design by placing a wildlife viewing deck over the top, which will be made accessible by will be made ADA accessible via an elevator installed in the main building. And it will offer panoramic views of the wetlands and sufficient space for a whole classroom of students to gather on the deck for interpretive programs. And last slide. Finally, the Ecology Center will be encircled by the Wetlands Discovery Path, which will be a short ADA walking path featuring interpretive signage, and several of the signs will have interactive audio buttons with sounds for common birds and wildlife found in the area. The larger network of trails in the Napa River wetlands will also be accessible from the Ecology Center and the Wetlands Discovery Path. Staff recommends approval of the project as proposed, and Janelle Selleck, Executive Director of the American Canyon Community and Parks Foundation, is with us and would like to make a comment as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you to the Wildlife Conservation Board here for considering our application. I'm Janelle Selick, Executive Director of the Foundation and the Napa River Ecology Center project. The project was really born out of a demonstrated need in the community. The Parks Foundation has been running and responding to demand for wildlife, environmental education, and watershed education programs for the past 10 years. We've really grown to become the top provider of these programs in South Napa County, serving not only the cities of American Canyon, but cities throughout Napa County, as well as into neighboring Solano County. Our holdup is that we don't have a home base for operating these programs, and so we're limited in responding to the demand. Right now, we can really only operate and accommodate 1 out of about every 4 requests. And even as the community grows to love our wetlands more and appreciate it as both an educational opportunity and a space to be preserved. Luckily, our strong partnership with the City of American Canyon, alongside them, they identified the former Corporation Yard as a possible location for us to convert into the Ecology Center. So we spent about the past 3 years working with the city on a lease agreement, as well as a contribution from the city for us to repurpose the project, and then also working on our design plans. I've gotten through our 100% designs, as well as our approvals and getting into our environmental permitting. So funding from the Wildlife Conservation Board would be very instrumental in us finalizing our construction documents, as well as being able to break ground on the project. And I have to say, some of my favorite days at work are when I can get out from my office and get out and experience the programs and be out with the kids. I was just telling Elisa that last week I went out with one of our mobile classroom programs, and I sat inside and worked with a 2nd grader who grabbed some specimens. We have insect and different kinds of wildlife specimens that they use, and they look at and analyze through a microscope work. And so the 2nd grader put her specimen under, it was a butterfly, and she zoomed in, she zoomed back out, and she looked up at me with this big smile on her face, and she said, "I feel like a real scientist." And it lit up my day and lit up hers. And we talked a little bit more, and she looked back at me again and said, "I wish I could do this every day." So it really is those kind of days that both reaffirm and recommit our foundation's commitment to this project, and as well as the partners that we work with. So we're really looking forward to breaking ground on this project, and with the Wildlife Conservation Board on our side, look forward to opening it to the community. So thank you very much for your consideration, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And so anyone online or in the room that wants to make public comment in a moment, now's the time to queue up. Any questions from board members? Okay.
Well, first I want to say I got to go to this old industrial site, and I love the vision of turning it into a place where people can enjoy nature. We've done a lot of bad things to the San Francisco Bay, so this will turn back the clock. I'm excited about that. I just need to read into the record, we need to add a funding source to this project. So I'm going to read it in a very boring way because it has to get in. We're adding $50,000 from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund / General Fund Budget Act of 2023, targeted for fish and wildlife resources, climate change impacts on wildlife. And the citation is AB 102, Section 84, subsection 1. So we missed that. Thank you.
Okay, any public comment in the room? Seeing none, do we have any speakers in the virtual queue?
There are no raised hands.
Coming back to the board, can we get a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second. Roll call.
Chair Bonham.
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami.
Aye.
Member Gear.
Aye.
Member Pavley.
Aye.
Member Peralt. Member Thomas. Motion passes.
Exciting. Okay, the next project in our list of big acquisitions is the Monte Rio Redwoods project, and Daniel Vasquez will present.
This proposal is to consider a grant to Save the Redwood League and Sonoma County Regional Parks as successor grantee. The 1,517 acre Redwoods property known as Monte Rio Redwoods. It's adjacent to Sonoma Coast State Park, which had a few of the properties right there had some WCB funding involved. Monte Rio, next slide, please. Monte Rio Redwoods is comprised primarily of redwood and Douglas fir forest. For many years, the primary use has been for timber harvesting. The current landowner also allows mountain biking through a mountain biking club membership on the property. This acquisition will prevent any future commercial logging and development, thereby protecting extensive red forest habitat and strengthening a critical wildlife corridor. Pictured is an old growth redwood that is at least 1,500 years old and approximately 200 feet tall with a diameter of 14 feet. Next slide, please. The project expands the existing Monte Rio Redwoods Park and Preserve and protects land within historic territories of both the Kashia Band and Southern Band of Pomo Indians. On the property are headwaters of 3 different creeks that are all tributaries of the Russian River. These creeks are important for water quality and for coho salmon and steelhead trout spawning habitat. Slide, please. As successor grantee and fee title owner, Sonoma Regional Parks will discontinue commercial timber production and focus on habitat protection, restoration, public access, and climate resilience. The acquisition fills a gap in protected lands, creating a continued protected area of 22,000 acres. At close of escrow, the property will be encumbered with a conservation easement held by Sonoma County Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District. Public access and recreation opportunities will be provided as part of a long-term management plan. Next slide, please. Acquiring Monte Rio Redwoods will protect redwood forest habitat, enhance habitat connectivity within an important wildlife corridor, support goals of 30 by 30, protect water quality of headwaters of 3.6 miles of creeks, enhance climate resilience, and expand public access to nature. Staff recommends approval of the project as proposed. Here in attendance is Jess Stump, Sarah Press from Save the Redwoods League, Steve Earhart from Sonoma County Regional Parks, and Olivia Flory from Ag and Open Space to address any questions. My understanding is Sarah and Steve want to make some comments.
Thank you. And those online, now would be the time to raise your hand. And come on up. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. I'm Sarah Press with Save the Redwoods League. And really, I'm here with a number of our partners, and really we want to thank Wildlife Conservation Board for considering the Monte Rio Redwoods project, which acquires timberland from the Mendocino Redwood Company, transfers it to Sonoma County Regional Parks, and protects it forever with a conservation easement and recreation covenant to be held by Sonoma County Ag and Open Space. So we greatly appreciate the hard work that WCB staff has put into this project, working to meet some really timely deadlines. And so we really appreciate the work that we've done together. Protecting this 1,500 acre property really connects redwood habitat and public access adjacent to state park from Sonoma Coast all the way inland to an existing regional park and beyond. And is really fits the missing link in this larger area of protected land. So the project would not be possible without the partnership that we have created around this project. And that includes funding contributions from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, Sonoma Land Trust, and Sonoma County Ag and Open Space District. So we appreciate Wildlife Conservation Board's consideration of being part of the team. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Eric. I'm the Park Planning Manager for Sonoma County Regional Parks. I want to thank you for considering our funding proposal and thank you for the long-term partnership with the state, both Wildlife Conservation Board and the Coastal Conservancy that has stitched this legacy landscape together. This is truly a generational opportunity for us in Sonoma County and visitors everywhere for all the reasons Daniel and Sarah have touched on. One of the additional points is our existing park, which was also partially acquired with state help. It has direct access to Monterey, a community of ours that has a disadvantaged characteristics. And so it's one of our few areas that is not doing as well as everywhere else. And we really appreciate the investment into this area. This is as multi-benefit as it gets for us. And as I like to say, 30 by 30 in a box. So thank you kindly. We look forward to furthering our partnership and many other projects to come and here as well.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or concerns? Karen?
I just have a question for Steve. So very exciting to see Montero connected now to the coast. So how soon can someone going to be able to walk on a trail from Montero out through Willow Creek?
6 weeks.
6 weeks, awesome.
So because of the existing use pattern that is well documented, we are able to continue a similar level of use. Meanwhile, we'll undertake a master plan for long-term operations and maintenance and park planning. So for those who don't know, the aforementioned Bicycle Club has built about 20 miles of single track trail that thread through the property. So there's every day people are enjoying it, but it's been rather exclusive. So the rest of the community can finally join when you can.
That's great. Great to hear.
Okay, so anyone else in the audience here have public comment to offer? Seeing none, let's go to technology and see if we have anyone in the queue online.
There are no raised hands.
Coming back up to the board, I'll make a motion to approve this agenda item as staff recommend.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt, Member Thomas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, congrats. Sounds like you're going hiking in 6 weeks.
Wow. Very exciting. Our next item is the Salmon and Packer Creek Aspen Restoration Project presented by Jennifer Stanfield.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is a proposal to consider the allocation of a grant to the South Yuba River Citizens League, also known as Circle, for a restoration project on 205 acres in Sierra County. Next slide, please. The project will occur on Forest Service land with extensive public recreation, including 8 public and private campgrounds within the project area. These facilities provide ample opportunities to connect the public with nature while also increasing the risk of unplanned wildfire ignitions. The project contributes to a 275,000 acre landscape scale resilience effort being stewarded by 9 organizations to identify and prioritize implementation projects in the region. And that effort is known as the North Yuba Forest Partnership. The overview photo illustrates the effect of fire exclusion on the site dating back to the late 19th century, which has created a situation with densely stocked forest, high fuel loading, and conifer encroachment into aspen stands and meadows. The aspen stands on the site overall are in decline and fragmented due to this lack of disturbance for many years. Next slide, please. The aspens and meadows function as precious biodiversity hotspots within the conifer forest by hosting an abundance of plant species paired with hydrologic resources. This habitat richness provides a wealth of foraging and nesting opportunities to wildlife from tiny insects all the way up to charismatic megafauna. Though aspen comprises less than 1% of the forest in the Sierra Nevada, it plays an outsized role in wildfire resilience by increasing humidity and water retention on site, which can modulate fire severity. Next slide, please. The restoration goals include expansion of meadow habitat, promotion of aspen regeneration, and expansion of fragmented aspen stands, as well as site conditions improvements to promote a healthy and vibrant forest. These will be achieved through conifer thinning within and around aspen stands, preparation for future introduction of low-intensity, biologically appropriate, and ecologically beneficial prescribed fire, and the installation of 15 beaver dam analogs in the adjacent meadow to slow, spread, and sink water. These will be achieved, biomass will be disposed of by piling and burning on site until the unit reaches capacity for these piles based on their size and spacing. After that, biomass will be removed from the site and taken to the nearest processing facility. The conifer thinning included in this project has the additional benefit of reducing overcrowded forest conditions favorable to forest pests. Circle will leverage public access for community education and engagement by posting signs in the nearby campgrounds, posting on local community billboards, and leading guided site tours with information focusing on forest health and the importance of aspen stands. Next slide, please. Through the implementation of activities described, the project will improve forest health and promote interconnected aspen stands while reducing channel incision on the adjacent meadow and expanding the meadow footprint. The site will have increased soil moisture later into the dry season and will, along with the conifer thinning, increase biodiversity and wildfire resilience. Staff recommends the project as proposed, and here in person with us from Circle are Alicia Wiseman and Anne Marie Holt. And I'd like to invite Alicia up to say a few words in support of the project.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Wiseman. I'm the Watershed Science Director at the South Yuba River Citizens League. And I would like to start by thanking the Wildlife Conservation Board for considering this project. In 2020, Circle, the South Yuba River Citizens League, received funding from WCB to assess the health of aspen stands throughout the Yuba River watershed. Of 123 aspen stands surveyed as part of that grant, Anne Marie did so much of that, it was a lot of work. The aspen within Salmon and Packer Creek were identified as the highest priority for restoration due to the existing conifer encroachment and the future potential of this site to provide high elevation climate refugia habitat. The outcome of this project will be enhanced interconnected aspen habitat throughout Salmon and Packer Creeks with robust regeneration and diverse age classes. Restoration will have the added co-benefits of increased understory vegetation diversity, increased habitat for fauna, and increased resilience to the threat of high severity fire. And with that, I'd just like to thank you again for your consideration.
Any questions, comments from board?
Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick comment. I think I just love to hear when projects sort of build on each other. There was funding that we heard about and then we granted, and then the results from that work, that assessment sort of led to implementation of a project that is going to meet our 30 by 30 goals. Like that's the way it should happen. And when we get to hear the way that story unfolds and builds on each other, it just makes us know that that money was invested in both instances. And so bring on the next one and hopefully it just continues. Thank you.
Okay, while we're gonna check in the room, those online, this would be the moment to raise your hand real quick. Any other public comments in the room? Seeing none, how about online?
There are no raised hands.
We'll come back up to the dais.
I'll move approval of this item.
And a second,
Second.
roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt, Member Thomas, Motion passes.
Okay, our next item is Butte County Metafoam, and Kim Cruz will present, but I'm just going to take 1 second before we let that happen and just acknowledge, I mean, all of these projects take a lot of time and effort. I think Member Gear knows this well, but I just want to especially call out the acquisition team as a general matter. They have a lot of projects on this agenda, which means a lot of work for our attorneys, a lot of work for the supervisors. I mean, these land transactions are complicated. They look easy when we bring them to you, but they take sometimes years. This one, I think I heard about it at least over a year ago, but a lot of these are much longer. So I just want to give them a special shout out, how much I appreciate the whole team. So thank you, Chair. Please, Kim.
Thank you. The Butte County Metafoam eschew project is to consider the allocation for a WCB grant of $2,124,200 and a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service subgrant of $6,045,800 to California Open Lands to purchase 20 acres of land for permanent conservation. The property is located in the city of Chico at State Route 32 and Bruce Road and lies within a disadvantaged community. Its location is across the highway from the Merriam Park Preserve, also owned and managed by California Open Lands. Next slide, please. With the board's approval, the property will be preserved forever to protect the rare vernal pool habitat of Butte County Metafoam, a federal and state-listed endangered plant. Butte County Metafoam exists nowhere else but a narrow 25-mile strip along the eastern flank of the Sacramento Valley. Factors such as urban development and climate impacts make it increasingly vulnerable to population decline. The permanent conservation of this property will support the recovery of Butte County Metafoam and its unique vernal pool ecosystem, which provides critical habitat for other rare species, including the federally threatened fairy shrimp and endangered tadpole shrimp. Next slide, please. The property is vacant land that supports a variety of habitats. Vernal pools are spread throughout the property's grasslands, and a creek runs along the northern boundary of the site, creating a riparian corridor with cottonwood and valley oak trees. Next slide, please. Upon acquisition, the Butte County Metafoam eschew property will be owned and managed by California Open Lands in perpetuity. California Open Lands is a nonprofit organization whose mission encompasses conserving natural resources in the Northern California region, restoring and cultivating California native plants using indigenous, traditional ecological knowledge, and fostering connections between communities and their neighboring open lands. In closing, staff recommends approval of the project as proposed. Joining us online are Allie Metters-Knight, Executive Director of California Open Lands, along with Melissa Stanfield, Senior Environmental Scientist with CDFW's North Central Region, and in person, landowner George Eschew, who are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Those online, now would be the time to raise your hand. Coming up to the board, any questions for staff or the other representatives? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience want to offer public comment? Okay, let's see if we have anyone in the online queue.
The chat raised hands.
Great. If you could call our speakers for us.
Eric, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I just did.
We can hear you.
Okay, this is Eric Nilsson from Smart Growth Advocates in Chico, California. And while we are in support of creating land protections for this property, we are concerned about the inflated per acre precedent it sets. Thus, while it is true that this property has meadowfoam, is threatened by development, and has riparian habitat on a portion of the property, community members active in pursuing land protections to drive smart growth while conserving key habitats, soils, and wildlife corridors have the following concerns. Concern that many partners have actively and strategically worked with conservation-minded private donors to line up purchases of development-prone land with conservation and biodiversity benefits in this eastern edge of Chico's city limits, and have developed MOUs to establish land protection in perpetuity. Negotiations are approaching acquisition of upwards of 3,500 plus acres located within a 5-mile radius of this project for substantially less than $400,000 an acre, the acre price determined by the WCB and U.S. Fish and Wildlife grants totaling $8 million. The precedent set by this sale would jeopardize those negotiations and MOUs. Strategic regional land conservation planning among multiple nonprofit land conservation organizations is ongoing, including coordination among 3 accredited land trusts. Despite invitations to participate in the strategic regional conservation planning, California Open Lands has not joined the planning conversations. The 3,500 plus acres has great value in terms of biodiversity and land connectivity, which is consistent with California's 30-30 goals and is of great benefit to the community and area. As a point of comparison, that 3,500 acres at 400,000 acres would cost $1.4 billion. We encourage the WCB to consider postponing this decision and to allow time for gathering this prospective grantees' efforts alongside the local grassroots effort to maximize private voluntary land conservation and continue collective efforts for the value of BCM and a multitude of other special species and in truly special places. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your input. Next speaker, please.
Deb, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Unmute. Okay, I'll start again. I'm Elizabeth Devereaux, member of Chico Smart Growth Advocates. Chico Smart Growth Advocates had a very successful referendum last year on a 1,448 acre development, with 60% to 30% of our population saying no to the project. We have been trying to get a land trust to work with the sellers of this land, but if this project on Highway 32 and Bruce Road gets $2 million from WCB and another $6 million from U.S. Forest and Service, totaling $8 million, it will be $400,000 an acre. And this will make it impossible for us to afford to conserve both the 1,448 acre site that we have successfully referendumed against and 12,000 other acres for land for possible conservation in Chico. While we are in support of efforts to preserve and protect lands for conservation, we ask that you please consider delaying your decision until a broader analysis of our regional conservation and preservation needs are studied. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Great, thanks. Any other speakers in our queue online?
There are no raised hands.
Great. Couple of thoughts coming back up to the board. Our agenda is pretty specific on page 83, and each agenda item would have something similar when it's fee title acquisition. As board members know, staff go through a required process at the Department of General Services, which is an appraisal process that sets the fair market value. And I think in response to the last 2 comments, perhaps in a continuing way, our staff can reach out to those commenters and just kind of understand the regional dynamic. But the board follows the fair market value set in our Department of General Services process.
I agree with that, but perhaps staff could just let us know, what the specifics are to this property that made it appraised so high. Is it a zoning issue or?
It is a zoning, and I understand that this particular property is one of the last, if not the last, has properties with high density residential zoning as well as commercial. Has different components, but that's why the value is where it is.
That makes sense. Thank you.
California Open Lands had their hand raised for a second.
Please.
Would you like to speak still?
Yes, I just want to comment and say that I also would like to have outreach afterward. I did not see any correspondence coming my way for this, but for follow through, I do want to extend the opportunity to meet with this organization. We are grassroots, and I think that it's a great time to sit down with other grassroots agencies within this territory, Mechoopda territory, Chico area that we live in. Thank you.
Okay, no other public comment in the room. Any questions or bring it back up for possible motion? I'll make a motion to approve the agenda item as staff recommends.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt, Member Thomas. Motion passes.
Thanks,
Great.
Kim.
So we now have our last project agenda item. Come on up. And those watching, we will have a final agenda item, which is public comment, not on the agenda.
Correct. So this is Van Auken Creek Habitat Enhancement, Aaron Heyman presenting. Thank you, Aaron.
Jen, members of the board, good afternoon. This proposal is to consider a project on Van Auken Creek on property owned by Lost Coast Forest Lands, a private landowner, and located in Humboldt County. This proposal would allocate $1,479,000 for an implementation grant to Sanctuary Forest to benefit Chinook salmon, coho salmon, and steelhead. Next slide, please. Van Auken Creek is a tributary to the Mattole River, which flows through Humboldt and Mendocino counties. And this project would occur along 4,000 feet of that creek and the surrounding 40 acres of mixed riparian, conifer, and hardwood forests. This project builds on previous funding from WCB to acquire a conservation easement on the property held by the applicant. And it also builds on other WCB funds used in other reaches of the Mattole River watershed. Next slide. Van Auken Creek was historically an important spawning area for coho, chinook, and steelhead. However, historic land use practices, including industrial logging, removal of large woody debris from the creek channel, and channel straightening have combined with climate change degradation to simplify the channel, to degrade and to incise the channel, which all significantly impact dry season flows in the creek and reduce the overall suitability of the creek as fish habitat. Next slide. This project will add large woody debris to the creek, install in-stream wood and boulder weirs and other in-stream structures to slow water flow, allow gravel beds to accumulate, and increase the sinuosity of creeks, and also will improve stream connectivity, pool connectivity, and other natural stream flow processes. The project will also thin 40 acres of surrounding forests to reduce water loss and reduce wildfire risks. These actions will all combine to increase dry season flow in Van Auken Creek, thereby improving habitat conditions for both spawning and juvenile salmonids. Staff recommends that the board approve the project as proposed. In the audience is Walker Wise of Sanctuary Forest, and online, I believe, is Tim Metz, who represents the landowner, to answer questions. I'd like to invite Walker to come and share some comments, and also to share some comments from the Wailaki Tribe White Lily Clan.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, board. You covered it pretty well. I am happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. I think the only things I would add are that this project is part of a comprehensive effort in Van Auken Creek. We've really view Van Auken Creek as one of our highest potential streams for recovery of especially coho salmon in the Mattole headwaters. So we have several projects in this watershed. And I also wanted to say that the forest thinning is actually riparian thinning, which is a pretty cool, neat, innovative approach. And that's why we think it could have an impact on stream flow from overstocked forest right in the riparian area. But there's also other goals from the riparian thinning. With that, I would like to read the statement from our tribal partners who are not able to attend today. It is a address to the board. Dear members of the Wildlife Conservation Board, Chairperson Dorothy Hoagland and I are unable to attend this important meeting in person or by Zoom as we had originally planned. It's difficult to choose between our support for the graduating accomplishments of the next generation and the important restoration work before you today. The Wailaki Tribe White Lily Clan is grateful to the project landowner, applicant, engineering team, and technical advisory committees for their earnest work that brought the Van Auken Creek Habitat Enhancement Project before you today. As we emphasize often, the Wailaki people do not possess subsistence rights in our ancestral land. This is due to a wide range of habitat impairments. Salmonid species and lamprey are a significant part of our ancestral culture, which we have been deprived of for many years. The first step to regaining cultural subsistence for our people in these watersheds is to improve in-stream riparian habitat for salmon and steelhead and to restore terrestrial habitat that surround these critical watersheds. We believe that this project accomplishes both. The state of California has moved to support a number of projects that have directly benefited our stewardship efforts. On behalf of Chairperson Hoagland and the Wailaki people, I am asking you to add your strength to our efforts by approving this project today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll come up to the dais and online if you want to raise your hand. Any questions, comments? I see Karen poised.
I just one because Sanctuary Forest is close to my heart. You had a similar project in Baker Creek, correct? That is now several years old. So are you starting to see results from the efforts, the in-stream efforts there? I think so. Yeah, the in-stream. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Baker Creek was a focus of a lot of Sanctuary Forest efforts in the last decade. And there's in-stream work with weirs and in-stream habitat. And there's a network of ponds that we constructed in there for a groundwater recharge project. And yes, we have results of small stream flow benefits. We've really struggled with some of our stream flow projects to get the benefits in the driest part of the year, which is what we're really targeting and is very difficult to accomplish. So most of our stream flow benefits have been in those shoulder seasons, more like in June and early July. So I would say that some of the stream flow aspects of the projects in Baker were partially realized and were had some benefits, but we're also learning experiences. But Baker's doing really well. We think we're about to do a survey out there. We think it's loaded full of coho this year, which it's struggled to maintain a coho population, and we will continue working in Baker for sure. It's one of about 10 priority tributaries that we consider our best chance for recovering coho in the Mattole headwaters, and Van Auken is another. So there's about 10 that we're really focused on.
Great, thank you.
Tim Metz is also online.
Yep, I'm here.
And has his hand raised.
Hang on a second, Tim. Just let me check and see if there's anyone in the room. Oh, okay. We'll go to Tim. Sorry.
It's an honor to be here to speak in strong support of this project. I am Tim Metz, a local professional forester. I've worked in the Mattole headwaters for more than 30 years, and I've been working with Sanctuary Forest, and I'm the contracted land manager for Lost Coast Forest Lands. And Lost Coast is an impact investment that works with local nonprofits, a lot of fish action groups, to really realize a lot of these on the ground, tenure-based projects. And in this particular case, in Van Auken Creek, we've been very fortunate to get to partner with Sanctuary Forest yet again to create a conservation easement, which WCB graciously provided a lot of the funding for. And we wrote this easement specifically around the kind of partnership that you're looking at right here, where there is a specific reserved right for the grantee to do positive stream flow and fisheries enhancement kinds of work. It is my great pleasure to be able to work with Walker and Sanctuary Forest, you know, as the landowner's representative, the landowner's forester, to mix not only stream flow enhancement, but habitat enhancement with the kind of forestry that we've been promoting. We have a California compliance carbon offset project on these same acres. We're basically finding every way that we can really enhance those you know, ancillary benefits to watershed health. Carbon, we're looking at this kind of in-stream habitat work, stream flow augmentation work. I would like, just to really strongly support this particular project. It's Van Auken is in this unique place where we've got a confluence of a number of different grants. And with that conservation easement that I was just mentioning, we have a public access component to it. And so not only do we get to do this great work, we're going to invite the public out to see it. And they're going to get to see prescribed fire, in-stream wood. They're going to get to see collaboration of local timber owners along with local community. This is kind of a really special place. And so I just want to express my really strong support for this project. And we hope that we can keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so let me check in the room. Anyone in the room want to make public comment? Okay, and anyone else in the online queue?
We have one raised hand. Oh,
Let's go to that speaker.
okay, yeah, one raised hand. Michelle, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can I confirm you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michelle Bushnell, and I am the Humboldt County Supervisor for the 2nd District, which is in this area. My district is a very rural district and is struggling economically due to the collapse of cannabis. Projects like this are so important to our community and to this district. Restoration projects provide a much needed economic lifeline in our rural communities. I understand the Van Arken Creek Habitat Enhancement Project will improve fish habitat and forest health in the Van Arken watershed. While I am not familiar with the particulars of this project, I am very familiar with Sanctuary Forest and their work and their good track record. Sanctuary Forest has an enormous a track record for their restoration efforts, and they do a great job of hiring our local contractors and providing much needed local jobs for Humboldt County. For the benefits of our community and the environment, I urge you to please fund this project. I really am thankful for the time and opportunity to address your board today. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor. Questions from board members or comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move
Karen?
approval.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt, Member Thomas. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Hey, congrats to applicants and even more so staff. Another great meeting. You got a lot done for California. We have one left agenda item, and the name is Public Forum for Items Not on the Agenda. So we will give it just a second, and then we will see if there's anyone in the audience here in person. And it is mostly staff in the room at this point. And then in a second, I'll see if we have anyone online. So we'll give it a moment before we close that. Any speaker would have 2 minutes. Okay, so not seeing anyone in the room. Do we have any online person for public forum for items not on the agenda?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, so we're going to say meeting adjourned. Safe travels, everyone. It's awesome to see you, and go California.